Am I the asshole for ignoring my friends after they made me feel ignored? I'm a 15-year-old girl who recently cut ties with a group of friends due to feeling consistently overlooked and undervalued. They often excluded me from conversations, didn't initiate contact, and were inconsiderate of my feelings. During our term exams, when we would meet outside of class, they would often invite other girls to join their conversations, leaving me and another friend, Carla, fake name, feeling excluded. This wasn't a one-time occurrence, but a pattern that had been repeating. One day, when Carla wasn't there, I felt particularly lonely and decided to stop initiating conversations. The three of them seemed content with each other's company, and they didn't reach out to me either. That day, we didn't speak at all, and I gradually distanced myself from them. I started reflecting on past incidents, like the time one of them backstabbed me very harshly, but I chose to forgive. Another hurtful experience was my birthday party, where I invited only the 5 of us. Carla couldn't make it, but the other 3. One of them didn't even bother messaging or showing up even though I messaged her for hours. The other 2 arrived 2 hours late with cheap gifts. I am not trying to be rude, but it felt bad. I had spent hundreds on their gifts and they gave me some cheap on-the-spot necklaces and a dustbin. I felt incredibly hurt but didn't want to hurt them. Despite these past experiences, I tried to maintain the friendship. Recently, after we stopped talking, I was invited to one of their birthdays. I attended even though I didn't want to go. I arrived a little late, half hour, hoping they all had arrived early, but they all arrived very late. One friend, who lived nearby, arrived an hour late. The birthday girl looked visibly upset, and I quietly mentioned to Carla that she could have at least messaged the birthday girl about her delay. Unfortunately, the birthday girl overheard and the girl reacted angrily, sending me abusive messages saying she is more important than me, and that at least she doesn't ignore her friends and I should stop crying to everyone. I hadn't told anyone shit about other than my mom and Carla. Feeling hurt and disrespected, I posted screenshots of the messages on my Instagram. Story wrote back in the same way. She messaged me calling me an attention seeker. I then blocked them. I'm now feeling conflicted about my actions. Was I justified in reacting so strongly, or did I overreact? While I felt hurt and disrespected, I wonder if there was a more constructive way to handle the situation. Am I the asshole for not contributing to a car rental after saying that I wouldn't? My husband, 33M, and I, 33F, recently went overseas for a family wedding, along with my brother, 37M, his wife, 35F, and his son, 5M. We had originally planned to stay in a hotel, but my brother suggested that the 5 of us rent an Airbnb. We found a suitable rental which was located in the same neighborhood as my uncle, whose son was getting married, which would allow us to travel to their house regularly. My parents were staying there, and we had other family members staying in hotels or Airbnbs in the same area. Typically at weddings, overseas guests in my mom's family would congregate at the wedding house as a base every day to hang out, organize day trips, help with wedding prep. My brother said that he was also planning on renting a car and asked if we wanted to chip in. I said that if we did, we would expect to have equal use of the car. My brother thought about it and then said he would need access to the car for the entire holiday, so he would just pay for it himself. Now, on the holiday itself, it ended up being the case that we got a lot of lifts from my brother. We didn't insist on it or even ask, but we didn't turn the offer down either. It wouldn't have made much sense for us to get an Uber to my uncle's house when my brother was driving the car there. We were staying about 5 minutes drive away, or a 30-minute walk. We also went on one-day trip to the beach and another one to the countryside, and again we rode in my brother's car. A couple of times my brother would fill the car up. Now, he didn't actually ask us to contribute, but there were a couple of moments where there was a bit of a pause where he seemed to be waiting for me to offer. I didn't, because I'd made it clear we weren't bothered about renting a car. After we returned home, my mom called me and asked if it was true that I hadn't offered my brother any gas money. I said that I had agreed with my brother that we wouldn't be chipping in and that we hadn't ever gone anywhere that my brother wasn't planning on going anyway. My mom said that I should have offered gas money and this was different to sharing the cost of a car rental, but I don't really see why it is different. Am I the asshole for telling my co-worker to get over herself? I work in office in my city headquarters. In my office, there are 5 people. We have different tasks to perform. Yesterday, I was on walk-ins. There are 2 people usually on walk-ins. My partner started with us 3 months ago. She is nice and all, but at least twice a week she gets overwhelmed and just shuts down. Yesterday, she did 3 things and got overwhelmed. She just looked at her computer for hours. Just kept saying, "I'm overwhelmed, I don't know where to start." I always try and be patient, but it happened every day this week. She wasn't my partner every day, but other people had to work with her. Well, I had a meeting for one of the groups I help with. I came back to so many requests and people waiting to be helped. I said to her, "What are you doing?" This time she said, "I'm so overstimulated I can't do anything." Our other office mates were helping, but they had their own work. We have asked her how we can help her, what works for her. But she just says, "Well, this is how I am." There has been times in the past she gets overstimulated if she hears laughter or people talking. We can't order out much anymore because she gets overwhelmed with the menu. I looked right at her, it said, "Get over yourself and work." I know it was mean, but we are all over it. I did make her cry and she said she can't help it. Am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for refusing responsibility to dress toddler according to MIL preferences? In our household, 2-year-old toddler, both working full-time. I am the default parent and main mental load bearer. My husband does the laundry and has some other responsibilities, but I am the one doing the big ones. His parents help us out a lot, which I am super grateful for. I had severe postpartum anxiety, neurodivergent, and a history of GAD, and got panic attacks when our LO was 6 months and she was a very demanding baby. I am also just learning how to set boundaries better and ask for help, which I have been very bad at previously. Now to the question. His mother hates the color red, for whatever reason. I am already avoiding any red clothing or toy items for our child as well as for myself. Next week, the daycare is closed due to the holidays and my in-laws will look after our LO, which, again, I am super grateful for. Now this morning, after doing morning routine, making coffee and breakfast for everyone, getting our toddler dressed and ready to take her to daycare, which I do every day. We just recently installed the rule that he also gets up and helps me with it. Prior, he slept in every morning since she was born, and in 26 months I have not been the one to get up on exactly 5 occasions. He suddenly asks that I next week, when our LO goes to his parents instead of daycare, take care that I dress her in blue and green only and avoid and hues or shades of anything red as his mother doesn't like it. I refused and said that I was not willing to add the shade of red as something to keep in mind on top of everything else. I know it is a simple request and I could easily do it, but I am just so fed up with the ever-growing demands that I feel like simply saying no and stop this is enough. Am I the asshole for this? Am I the asshole for telling a mother that I don't care about her daughter being dumped by my son? My son, Dylan, has been dating a girl named Melanie since they were both in 10th grade. They're now juniors in high school. Last week, Dylan decided to break up with her, and it seemed to hit Melanie really hard. I didn't think much of it at first, since breakups happen all the time at their age, but then things took a strange turn. Yesterday, I got a text from Melanie's mom asking me to call her. She said it was about something important. When I called her, she mentioned that Melanie had left her sweater at our house a couple of weeks ago and asked if I could return it. I said sure, no problem, and told her she could come pick it up whenever was convenient for her. She came over later in the day, and as soon as she stepped into the house, she launched into this whole conversation about how Dylan hurt Melanie when he broke up with her. She said that Melanie had been really attached to my son and that the way Dylan ended things was incredibly hurtful. According to Melanie's mom, Dylan didn't break up with her in the right way. I'll admit I was a little taken aback. I wasn't sure how to respond to her at first, but I just calmly told her that I wasn't going to be talking to Dylan about his breakup or how it affected Melanie. I explained that they were both high school students and that this kind of thing happens all the time. It's a normal part of growing up, and I don't see why Melanie's situation should be treated any differently than anyone else's. Then, Melanie's mom started getting a little more upset. She said that Dylan's way of breaking up with Melanie was just too casual, and that he should have been more considerate. I explained that Dylan wasn't mean about it at all. He told Melanie that he just wanted to focus on spending more time with his friends and didn't want to be in a relationship at the moment. I didn't think that was a bad reason, but apparently Melanie's mom didn't agree. She insisted that it was a lame excuse, and that Dylan should have at least talked to her about it instead of just cutting ties like that. At that point, I said that I really didn't care. I told her that Dylan didn't owe an explanation to her or to Melanie about why he didn't want to date her anymore. It was his choice, and as much as I understood that breakups can be tough, they're a part of life. I tried to explain that I wasn't going to apologize for how Dylan handled it or even go back to him to make him apologize. It just didn't seem necessary to me. Melanie's mom wasn't backing down, though. She pressed me on whether I cared about how my son treated his girlfriends. She asked if I was really okay with the way he treated Melanie and if I didn't care that he hurt her feelings. I thought about it for a second, and then I told her that it wasn't my job to fix every situation that Dylan was involved in, and that it wasn't my responsibility to smooth things over for her daughter. I told her that, honestly, I didn't care how her daughter was feeling about the breakup, just like I wouldn't expect her to care if Dylan had been upset by a breakup. She was quiet for a moment, but then she snapped, saying that it wasn't the same and that I wasn't seeing things from Melanie's perspective. I replied that I didn't really care to see things from her perspective, and that at the end of the day, it was Dylan's life and his relationship choices, not mine to dictate. I added that my son was old enough to make his own decisions and that if Melanie was upset, she needed to handle it herself, like any other teenager. Before she left, she asked me if I would at least apologize to Melanie for the way Dylan treated her. I told her no, I wasn't going to do that. I repeated that I had nothing left to say to her, except that I really didn't care about her or her daughter's feelings on the matter. It was just how I felt. Now, I'm wondering if I went too far. Was it really wrong for me to be so blunt? Am I the one being inconsiderate, or was I just being realistic? I'm not sure if I could have handled the situation better, but I didn't think I should have apologized for something that wasn't really my problem in the first place. Did I overstep, or was I justified in telling her how I felt? Am I the asshole for expecting too much from a friend? I've been best friends with Kim, 35 female, for our entire lives. We live about 20 minutes apart, so it's not like distance is an issue. Over the years, I've tried reaching out to her multiple times, about once every couple of months, to hang out, have coffee, or just chat. But I'm usually met with silence or delayed responses, sometimes up to 2 weeks. When she does get back to me, it's always along the lines of, "Sorry, I've been so busy," or "I've been depressed and can't really do anything." But then, I'll see her hanging out with other friends on Facebook, which feels hurtful. I've called her out on this behavior before, and she apologized, telling me she's been so depressed that she couldn't talk to anyone. Yet, the next week, she'll be out with other people, doing things like going to parties or having dinner with friends. I've tried to be understanding, but after a while, it started to feel like she wasn't really making an effort. The last straw came when my mom died. My mom was like a second mom to Kim growing up, and Kim's mom was the same for me. I reached out to Kim because I really needed her, especially since she knew how close I was to my mom. But I got nothing from her. No calls, no texts. I gave her some time, thinking maybe she was just struggling with her own stuff. But then, 3 weeks later, I saw on Facebook that Kim had been spending all this time with Sam, whose mom had just passed away, comforting her and being there for her. It was all over Facebook. Felt like a slap in the face. It was like I didn't even matter to her, even though we've been through so much together. That's when I stopped reaching out to her altogether. It wasn't just about the mom situation. It was the cumulative effect of years of me trying to keep the friendship alive while she consistently pulled away. A couple of years later, I posted a couple of memes on Facebook about friendship, specifically about what it means to be a true friend. I didn't tag anyone, and I didn't add any commentary. It was just the memes, and I thought they captured how I was feeling. Kim saw them and reached out, saying that true friends don't need to talk every day, and that true friends don't act mean to their friends who are dealing with depression. She was clearly upset. I get that she's right in a way. True friends don't need to talk every day, and it's not right to be cruel to someone who is depressed. But at the same time, I don't think it's unreasonable for me to expect her to be there for me when I'm grieving. True friends don't ignore their friends during times of need. True friends don't use their depression as an excuse to avoid one person but still make time for others. Kim ended up accusing me of having hate in my heart, and said that she was deciding to root for me from afar because she didn't need my negativity in her life. So now I'm left wondering, am I the asshole for expecting her to be there for me during my hardest times? Was I wrong to post those memes as a way of expressing how I felt about our friendship? Or was I just chasing after someone who wasn't really interested in putting in the effort to be a good friend? I know that sometimes relationships change and people grow apart, but I feel like I gave her so many chances. And yet, when it was my turn to need a friend, she wasn't there for me. Was I wrong to have expectations? Or am I just being too sensitive? Am I the asshole for refuse to marry my enemy? So hello everyone, I need others' opinion on this. So I, 15F, have an enemy, 18M, named Alex, fake name BTW. Me and him has been enemies since childhood. He constantly teases me, steals my food. He loves watching me suffer. One time, he was at our house with his parents for a barbecue party. As our families were busy talking, he lifted me up and throws me into the pool, clearly knowing that I can't swim. As I struggled, he was laughing. After some time, he finally got me out, still laughing. Back to the topic. So my dad, 40M, and his dad, 43M, named Jake, fake name as well, has been friends since inseparable since their college. Jake is our neighbor, so he comes to our house constantly. Yesterday, Jake came to our house with Alex. I served them some tea and snacks. As I was leaving, Jake said that I'm perfect match for Alex and that I should marry him. I was stunned. I looked at Alex thinking he might be against it, but he just smirks at me, so I said hell no and went to my room. After an hour, my dad came to my room, trying to convince me into marrying him, but I still refused. He left my room disappointed. Today, I got so many messages from my dad's side family accusing me of being a bad daughter and stubborn little brat, saying I should just marry him for the sake of my dad. My mom is supporting my decision. I love my dad a lot, guys, but I just don't want to marry him. TBH, he is extremely attractive, but he is just not my type. And also I'm so not ready to be married. Everyone will tease me at school, but I'm second guessing myself if I made the right choice. So am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for being dismissive of women because of my past experiences? I, 19M, had a pretty rough childhood. My parents separated when I was young, and my mom struggled with substance abuse. I spent a lot of time with her boyfriends, and a lot of them weren't great guys. I saw a lot of unhealthy relationships growing up, and to be honest, I never really had a great role model when it came to understanding how healthy relationships are supposed to work. My mom was always with men who treated her poorly, and I feel like this still affects my views of relationships. In high school, I had a few experiences with girls that messed with my self-esteem. I would be friends with girls, or they'd flirt with me, and then suddenly ignore me or reject me when I actually liked them. I think I had a real connection with someone, only for them to shut me down completely or go for someone else, usually a guy who seemed like he didn't care at all. I've always been unattractive and shy, and I feel like most women don't really understand how bad of an experience it is to be continually rejected like this. Even the ugly girls rejected me, though I was nothing but friendly. Now, as an adult, I find myself struggling to really trust women. I've been in a few relationships, but they never last, and it didn't help that they weren't sympathetic about it at all. From my experiences, I feel like women only want men who are either rich, good-looking, or have some sort of status. I've tried to be a good partner, respectful, honest, caring, but it never seems to be enough. I found myself getting frustrated and cynical when it comes to women, and I'm not sure how to stop feeling like they're just looking for something from me, rather than truly appreciating who I am. I was talking to a friend about it the other day, and I made a comment about how I feel like women just go for money or looks even if those guys treat them poorly. I said something like, it's like they don't care about a guy's personality unless he's got the looks or the money to back it up. My friend told me I was being bitter and that I was projecting my past experiences onto everyone. I know I'm probably coming across as cynical, but I'm really struggling to shake the feeling that I'll never be able to connect with women in a healthy, meaningful way. So am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for the advice I gave my best friend after her boyfriend was in a car accident? My 18F friends 18F boyfriend was in a car accident. Her boyfriend was in a car accident where his friends drug him out of the car, leaving him with paralysis from the upper chest down. Trying to be a supportive friend, I tried everything possible to support her. We worked together, so I covered as many shifts of hers as I could so she could spend time at the hospital. This happened in September. For reference, we graduated high school in June. I have the most empathy for him having to experience something like this so young. However, in October she went back to work, only on weekends so she could be at the hospital with him every day during the week, and talked about the situation. I asked her about the schooling she had started right before the accident, and she told me she had postponed it until December so that she had time to process the situation without the stress of schooling. I completely understand this. Then she mentioned that she was thinking of becoming an RN, and I told her that it was a wonderful decision for her to make if that's what she wanted to do. We started talking about how she could get it done at the same community college as me. This was when she told me, "Well, I can't do any of this anymore. This is the person I want to spend the rest of my life with and have kids with. This is my life now. I will be taking care of him." I was taken aback when she said this because that is a huge thing to say when you are fresh out of high school. For context, they have been together for 3 years. At the start of their relationship, he was with another girl saying that he loved her instead. This did happen, but after they started dating, he was still hanging out with his ex. After she had expressed uncomfortability with this, a month in, he cheated on her. He has a bad relationship with his parents, so he asked her if he could move into their house after they had been dating for a year. During this time, he didn't help around the house, refused to clean up after himself, and didn't get a job to help her pay the rent her parents had set for them. A year in, he cheated on her for the second time. I feel like a horrible friend for thinking this, but I cannot stand that she has made so many sacrifices for him and put her entire life on the back burner to take care of him. After she told me the statement about the kids and the rest of her life, this was the advice I gave her. "Slivia, fake name, I know you love him, and I know that this is a hard experience that I cannot even begin to understand, but you are so young and you cannot predict the future. I know that you love him and want to see him every day, but you cannot put your own life on hold. You have to focus on how you want to live your life in the future, and maybe take this time to find out who you are on your own without him. I support you in every decision you make, but I know you have the potential to do amazing things and I would hate to see you throw that away." Am I the asshole getting frustrated with my girlfriend's behavior after our arguments? My girlfriend, 25, tends to get sulky and sad after we have an argument, which is normal and understandable. However, in my opinion, most of our arguments are unnecessary because they often revolve around trivial matters or events that happened years ago. After an argument, she becomes very sulky, doesn't want to talk, locks herself away, and starts talking about wanting to break up. By now, I, 25, don't really respond to it anymore. I know that's not right on my part, because it's the same every time. She brings up old issues, gets upset about the past, makes accusations, and calms down after a few days. Then I'm accused of not caring, of leaving her alone and not taking care of her when she's sad. Even though I try to approach her and talk, she vehemently rejects all my attempts. Even when I go to work, I'm accused of leaving her alone with her problems and that my work is more important for me. Although I have the option to work from home, I'm only allowed to do so regularly 1 day a week, more in exceptional cases. But I'm slowly getting tired of constantly coming up with excuses to work from home for several days, only to be nagged all day and then hear why I'm here, even though she wants her peace. Am I the asshole in this case because I'm slowly giving up and not really responding to her behavior anymore? It's getting a bit too much for me when every little argument ends the same way, and she always says afterward, "I'm hurt. I'm sad. I don't want to see you." Am I the asshole for insulting my family over a disagreement with my aunt? I, 18F, recently was reminded of an incident that happened when I was 14. My dad, 54M, and my aunt, 56/7F, maintain that I was in the wrong, and it's caused a lot of tension at family gatherings because my mom, 53F, sister, 16F, and cousins, 17M and 15F, all agree that I was in the right. During the winter break of 2019 going into 2020, my dad's side of the family came to stay and celebrate with us. The older of my 2 cousins had gotten grounded, but managed to negotiate temporary relief while he was with us. One night, both of my cousins ended up fighting over a video game. Screaming, hitting, all the good things you'd expect in a fight between 2 siblings in middle school. It was almost midnight, and my sister and I were too tired to get involved in the argument. My aunt hears the commotion and brings all four of us out to the main room where the rest of the adults are. Cue the incident. See, my aunt believed that the best punishment was to make her kids go around and say one nice thing about everyone in the house. While that was fine, she then made my sister do the same punishment. Mind you, my sister and I weren't involved with the fight, and my aunt was clearly judging my sister and female cousin harsher than my male cousin. When she asked me to say my nice things, I insulted every single person in my family in the nicest way possible. For example, I told her something along the lines of how it was nice she cared about her children so much she would stop them from living their own lives. My mom had her head in her hands, my dad is doing the 1,000-yard stare, and all of my dad's side of the family is gaping at me. My sister, during my insult fest, ran out of the room. Somehow, I did not get hooped for doing that like I normally would have, and the gravity of what I did kicked in the next morning. I locked myself in my room for a day. So yeah, it's 4 years later and my family still argues over who was in the right. To put this to rest, I've decided that strangers on the internet are the best people to decide. Am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for getting tipsy at a book club trivia night, getting a ride from a friend, and thus causing my very kind husband to lose his crap? I'll try to make this brief. I, 27F, went to a book trivia night with a friend tonight. There is a group of 3 of us that have really bonded through books this last year. My husband, 33M, has confronted me several times over the last year about not having enough friends. I have a really hard time bonding with women due to quite a bit of friendship heartbreak in my life. All very different circumstances, but if you know that pain, you know. Anyway, it's taken me a lot of work and intentionality, but I finally have a handful of friends that I enjoy being around and trust. 2 of these friends and I have really bonded over books. Last month we did a boom trivia night for my favorite book, which we prepped extensively for, and did a trivia prep night at my house. My husband was out that night, so it worked out perfectly. We went 2 days later and had a blast. Since then, my husband had a pretty big planned surgery. He has worked so hard and I am so proud of him and his recovery. I've been taking care of him as much as I can / he'll let me, and it's truly been a pretty packed month because of this. The last few weeks have been so particularly nuts. Essentially, I haven't stopped working / doing things for 2 weeks straight. He had a Christmas party for his team at work that I essentially had to plan and execute minus communication, along with countless other things that go along with the holidays. This week, my friends and I decided to do a book exchange / trivia prep night. The next night, we hosted a Christmas party for his work team. Tonight, I went to that trivia night. One of our friends canceled because she's pregnant and not feeling well, but the other and I decided to go anyway. Long story short, I had one too many drinks and the best time with my friend. She graciously drove me home afterwards. I've literally never been drunk in public, and this was the first time I've ever not been able to drive myself home. I probably could have, but why the heck would I risk that? My husband was pissed. He was mad because he said he's been wanting to spend time with me and was waiting to watch a movie trailer with me. But I decided to go out with my friend instead, even though I could have canceled because someone else did. He was also mad because I put myself in a dangerous situation by being drunk at night in a city. I would like to say that I was gracious, but I wasn't. I apologized profusely, but I definitely snapped a bit and tried to hold my ground a bit. It wasn't helpful that I was still under the influence. I already have a very hard time standing up for myself and keeping things straight in an argument. I just kind of feel like I earned a night out for some fun after the month we've had. Maybe I'm wrong for that. I don't know. I want to feel bad, but I don't. I hate that he's upset, but I don't really think that I was wrong for having a night out at a boom club trivia night with a friend. So am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for spending NYE with friends instead of my boyfriend? Need advice on what to do. My boyfriend, 28M, and I, 27F, have been together for about 6 years. It is truly a great relationship and we see ourselves together in the long run. So this isn't me lashing out because I am unhappy in the relationship. Our first couple of NYEs were spent apart. We were with our respective families. The past couple of NYE we've spent together but haven't done much. Last year we went to a NYE party at a friend's place, but left around 20 minutes after the clock hit midnight. The year before, I really wanted to experience a NYE out at a bar and convinced him to go, but he ended up not feeling well, so we left early. Long story short, I ended up spending the countdown in an Uber with him passed out in the back seat. This year, we don't have anything planned for NYE yet, but a couple of my close friends invited me out for a concert in the city. I still haven't gotten my NYE night out in a city yet and feel like this is a great opportunity to. I asked my boyfriend if he wanted to do anything special for NYE and he said he didn't want to, so I mentioned that a couple friends invited me out and asked if he would want to come if I decided to go. He said that he probably wouldn't want to join but also wouldn't mind if I went, but I feel conflicted. Part of me wants to go out with my friends, but the other part feels bad for leaving my BF on NYE and not getting out New Year's kiss. Any advice on what to do? Thank you in advance, everyone. Am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for dedicating my time to music even though my wife hates it? I, 31M, am a guitarist and vocalist in a heavy metal band. Music has been a huge part of my life since my teens, and while I've had to juggle responsibilities as a husband and a dad, it's the one thing that still feels like me. My wife, 28F, and I have been married for 3 years and have a 16-month-old daughter. Here's the issue. I've recently started dedicating time daily to my music. I made this decision after feeling like I was losing touch with it, and honestly myself. At first, my wife was supportive, but now it's become a point of contention. She feels I'm being selfish for spending this time on music, even though I've made sure it doesn't take away from my responsibilities at home. To clarify, I still work full-time, help with our daughter, and make sure we have family time every day. The time I spend on music is after my daughter goes to bed, usually late at night, or early in the morning before anyone else is awake. I thought this would be a fair compromise, but it's turned into daily arguments. She says I'm not prioritizing her and our daughter, and that this is just a hobby I should give up for now. I've tried explaining that music is more than a hobby. It's part of my identity and mental well-being. I've even cut down my practice time to be more flexible, but it doesn't seem to help. She's accused me of acting like a single guy and not understanding the sacrifices marriage and parenthood require. I feel stuck. I love my wife and daughter deeply, and I'd never intentionally put them second. But I also feel like if I give up music entirely, I'll lose a piece of myself. TLDR, my wife is upset that I'm dedicating daily time to my music, late at night/early morning, so it doesn't disrupt family time. She thinks I'm prioritizing a hobby over my family, but I feel like giving it up would make me lose myself. Am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for lying while talking to taxi drivers? Sometimes I take a taxi to and from the train station, and not seldom the driver is a bit chatty, as some drivers tend to be. Now I don't mind chatting a bit. I am just not that keen on sharing anything remotely personal with a stranger, so I simply lie. No big outrageous stuff, but if they ask where I am heading with the train, I might say place B instead of place A where I am actually going. Or if I am actually going to see my grandmother, I could say that I am on my way to visit an uncle. Stuff like that. I am just making pleasant conversation in general, simply fibbing on some factual stuff. On occasion, I have company with me in the taxi, for example, my fiancé or my sister. They obviously know when I tell these lies, but do not call me out on it. My fiancé, however, has now begun to voice her concern over this, saying that it is simply wrong to lie to people, and that I am being a jerk. My sister thinks she is overreacting and that I am not causing any harm. AITA for doing this? Should I stop? I do prefer to talk a bit over simply being quiet, or worse saying out loud, sorry, I don't want to talk to you, because that would be rude in my view and also simply not true. And I think it would be even weirder to say something like, sorry, I don't want to mention where I am going, rather than just say a small lie. Am I the asshole for having to tell my job about my former in-law's bed bug? This is a long story, but I, female, 27, just started my recent job as a PCA. I go from house to house taking care of elderly clients. I met my former mother-in-law, 59, 2 years ago when I was dating her son. I took care of her because she suffered from vertigo and bipolar. I was walking in the rain and snow and hail to help her. I taught her to walk and talk again. Her bipolar caused her to put the blame on me for things I never did, but to keep the peace I simply accepted it. Her son and I ended up having a daughter who is now 1. My daughter's dad Gore locked up, so his mother and I did a non-legal contract for joint custody. I spent months doing interviews before my now new job while cleaning houses as a side job, still taking care of my daughter first. I've never asked for anything, and it was her suggestion to keep my daughter with her over there. Now I called my job a few days ago because I picked a bed bug off me. My job didn't give us any handboos on this stuff. So I asked about protocol, and they said we must stop care till her house was sprayed, and I said okay and tried to tell that I don't know what my other clients are allergic to. I told former mother-in-law what my job said, and she went off, and I simply walked out. Now Emma trying to get my daughter out of there, but she is refusing to let me see my daughter. I just wanted to know if am I the asshole for wanting to keep my other clients and kids safe? Am I the asshole for not siding with my friend? A close work colleague of mine, Jenny, was recently pursued by another colleague, Jim, who I'm also friendly with. Jenny was a bit anxious about the situation because they work together, but I encouraged her to pursue it, knowing that she liked him. They didn't sleep together, but they went out a few times and things seemed to be going well. At least that's what I thought. However, Jim suddenly went cold. He told Jenny that he wasn't looking for anything serious, and then started avoiding her at work. Things got worse when he started kissing another colleague. And now he's pursuing yet another woman from the office, someone on Jenny's team. It's been a pretty uncomfortable situation for her, especially as Jim's behavior has been both confusing and hurtful. Throughout all of this, I've tried to remain neutral. I told Jenny that Jim wasn't technically doing anything wrong. They're both consenting adults, and he's allowed to pursue whoever he wants. I also didn't want to create any office drama, so I advised Jenny to not be rude or confrontational with Jim. I told her to just ignore him and let it blow over. I've said this to her a few times, trying to offer a calm perspective, hoping that it would help her move on without making things more awkward. But today, Jenny told me that she was really disappointed in me. She said she didn't understand why I was so quick to defend Jim, especially after the way he's treated her. She's frustrated that I haven't taken her side more or expressed more empathy toward her situation. I don't feel like I'm defending Jim. I've acknowledged that his behavior has been hurtful, especially how he started ignoring Jenny, and I've made it clear that I don't think his actions were fair. But I also feel like it's important to be realistic about the situation. I didn't want to add to the tension, and I didn't want to make things worse for Jenny by fueling more anger or resentment. Still, Jenny's clearly hurt by my stance and feels like I should have been more supportive. Now, I'm left wondering if I've been too detached or dismissive of her feelings. Was I wrong for not immediately siding with her, for trying to stay neutral and not picking a side? Should I have done more to support her, even if it meant getting involved in the drama? Or is my approach the right one, trying to encourage her to move on without escalating things? Am I the asshole for talking trash about someone to their face when they do the same to me? I've been working with a group of coworkers who, on the surface, seem pretty friendly. But over time, I've realized that a lot of them have been talking behind my back in their native language right in front of me. Most of the time, it's not that bad, just casual gossip. But sometimes it gets mean-spirited and crosses boundaries. The thing is, they have no idea that I can understand what they're saying because they assume that, being a dumb white girl, I don't know their language. At first, I was a little uncomfortable with it, but I didn't say anything. Eventually, though, I started to get a bit fed up with it. So, I started talking trash about them too, but in a language they don't understand. It's like some sort of petty revenge. I don't directly confront them or say anything too bad to their faces, but I'll talk to a friend of mine, and we'll joke about the coworkers and make fun of them a bit. They have no clue that I'm talking about them, and I find it kind of hilarious. If one of them ever notices the hand gestures or asks what we're talking about, I just make up some harmless excuse, like, "Oh, we were just talking about a nature show on Netflix." I told a family member about this, and they called me out for it. They said I was being a major dick, and that it wasn't fair that I knew what they were saying about me but hadn't told them that I understood their language. They argued that I should have given them a chance to stop talking poorly about me, instead of just getting back at them. They also pointed out that by talking shit about them in return, I was being just as bad as they were, only out of spite since I know they can't understand me. Now I'm wondering if I've been in the wrong. I understand that talking behind people's backs is childish, but I also feel like they crossed a line by talking about me in a language they assumed I wouldn't understand. On the other hand, my family members' point about honesty and fairness kind of made me second-guess my approach. Am I being petty and vindictive, or am I justified in getting back at them for what they've done? Am I the asshole for asking the employee to remake my drink after deciding I wanted something else? So, here's the situation. I, 16 female, went through the drive-thru this afternoon while driving my younger brother and his friend to curling. The boys ordered farmer's wraps and hot chocolates, while I ordered a small iced coffee. Normally, when I get an iced coffee, I like it half sweet because if there's too much cream, it tends to mess with my stomach and gives me a bad stomachache. But this time, I forgot to mention it when ordering and decided it wasn't a huge deal since I usually don't have a problem. I paid for the order, passed the food back to the boys, and when I got my iced coffee, it was almost completely white. Like barely any coffee at all, just mostly milk or cream. I thought, okay, maybe it's just a lot of milk, no big deal. So I took a sip, and it was way too sweet. I mean, it tasted like I was drinking pure cream with a hint of coffee. It was so sweet I could feel my stomach cramping up just from the first sip. At that point, I knew I couldn't drink it. I pulled up to the window again and asked if they could make the coffee half sweet, which was not my original order, but I figured I could ask for it given how ridiculously sweet the drink was. The lady at the drive-thru was rude right away. She told me that if I wanted it half sweet, I should have asked for that when I ordered. She also said I was making extra work by not ordering it correctly. Honestly, I didn't think she was rude for explaining that, but her tone and body language made me feel like I was an annoying, difficult customer. It felt like she was treating me like I was doing something wrong on purpose, which made me feel bad. I started to pull the drink back in through the window, thinking I'd just deal with it and drive off, tossing the drink away since it was undrinkable. But then she stared at it and said, "Just give it here." She asked if I had drunk it, and before I could even answer, she yelled to someone else that I had already drank it and proceeded to pour the whole thing out the window. At that point, I felt super awkward and guilty, and I really didn't want to be a bother. A few seconds later, a different guy at the window handed me a new iced coffee, this time half sweet, and I felt bad because I didn't want to be that annoying, entitled customer. But on the other hand, I couldn't drink that much sugar or cream. It would have ruined my stomach for hours. So now I'm torn. Here's my reasoning for thinking I'm not the asshole. The amount of cream in the drink was extreme, and I physically can't handle that much. I've never received an iced coffee like that before. It was way more cream than coffee, and I genuinely couldn't drink it. Even though I didn't order half sweet, I felt like it was justified to ask for a remake because the drink was basically undrinkable. On the flip side, I'm wondering if I'm being unreasonable. I did request a completely different drink from my original order, half sweet. Even though I didn't ask for that initially, I did take a sip of the drink, so maybe I violated the whole idea of returning it. I probably should have just asked for it half sweet from the beginning, knowing that sometimes too much cream upsets my stomach. So, AITA for asking the employee to remake my drink after deciding I wanted something else? Am I the asshole for searching for the truth after my partner lied about his ex? So here's the situation. My partner, 31M, and I, 25F, have been together for a while now. One day, he told me a story about how he met a friend of his. However, there were a few things that didn't quite add up. For instance, he claimed he didn't know his friend's sexuality, even though they had been friends for over 10 years. When I asked how that could be possible, given the length of their friendship, he just dismissed it, saying things like, "I don't know, but there's nothing to worry about." At first, I tried to trust him and let it go, but something about the story still felt off. So, a few days later, I decided to check out his friend's LinkedIn just to get some context. To my surprise, the story he told me was completely false. His friend didn't attend the same university as my partner, as he had claimed. In fact, nothing my partner had told me about the meeting story matched up with the details I found. With this new information, I decided to confront him. Didn't tell him I had evidence at first, but I asked him again for clarification, saying, "I'd really appreciate clarity and the truth on how you met, because something doesn't feel right." Instead of being honest with me, he just repeated the same false story. That's when I decided to challenge him directly, using the evidence I had found. I asked, "Could you help me understand how you met this friend at university? Because his LinkedIn says he's 10 years younger than you. How could you have met a 14-year-old at university when you were 23? And how could a 14-year-old even be attending university?" He tried to defend himself by saying, "I'm sure she was 18. She was friends with my housemate and used to come over all the time." Eventually, he came clean after doubling down a few more times. It turned out that she was an ex of his from a couple of years ago, someone he had kept in friendly contact with since then. He said he lied because he didn't want me to worry about him meeting up with exes, even though I've never shown any sign of being uncomfortable with him being in contact with past relationships. After hearing all this, I needed some time to process everything, so I went home. But when I got home, I decided to message his friend to verify the new story my partner had told me. After talking to the friend, everything he said finally added up. Now, my partner says I was wrong for searching for evidence and that I should have tried to work out the trust issues without contacting his friend. He claims that this is the reason why I'm the asshole in this situation. But here's the thing. I feel like he's the asshole for not being upfront from the beginning. If he had been honest about his ex, I wouldn't have had to go looking for the truth in the first place. I understand the importance of trust, but I don't feel like I was in the wrong for wanting the truth when it was clear that I was being lied to multiple times. So, am I the asshole for searching for evidence after my partner lied to me about his ex? Am I the asshole for offending one of my idols? This has been on my mind for a while because it was such a weird and uncomfortable situation. Part of me regrets how things played out, but another part of me feels like I was justified in what I did. So, a little background. I'm 19 and really into skateboarding. I followed a lot of pro skaters and have a few idols in the skate community. One of my absolute favorites, a pro skater who was on my favorite team, Powell, actually reached out to me on Instagram. I couldn't believe it at the time. I followed him for years, and his skating has always been an inspiration to me. He's one of the most creative skaters I've ever seen. So when he messaged me, I was beyond stoked. He reached out after seeing a story I posted about ADHD. He said he related to it and opened up about his own experiences, including dropping out of high school, dealing with ADHD, and being autistic. We had a lot in common and hit it off right away, even joking around. I was absolutely over the moon, and I told my friends. I even shared screenshots of our conversation because, honestly, I was so excited and thought it was unreal. We started talking regularly, staying up late texting each other, and even exchanged videos. Everything seemed great, and I thought I had connected with one of my idols on a deep level. But things took a turn. We started getting into deeper conversations about trauma and personal struggles. I opened up about some of the things I've been through, including having to work at a young age. He was supportive, which I appreciated, but then he started flirting with me. It started with him calling me babe after seeing a video of me, and I told him I wasn't interested. I've got a boyfriend, and the age gap between us, he's in his late 30s, made it uncomfortable for me. He said he understood, but the flirting didn't stop. Instead, he began steering the conversations toward more sexual topics, talking about his ex, a younger, famous skater, and revealing personal, kind of gross details about his preferences. It made me feel very uncomfortable, but I didn't know how to handle it. To deflect, I tried making light of the situation by joking around, mostly about poop and but sex, totally ridiculous stuff to make the conversation seem less serious and awkward. But instead of backing off, he seemed to get obsessed with these topics. At one point, I made a joke that it seemed like he wanted to hook up with me because honestly, it started to feel that way. He got mad and accused me of flirting back, demanding that I admit it. I kept telling him I wasn't flirting. I was just joking to try to make the conversation less uncomfortable, but he wasn't having it. He said we could only stay close friends if I admitted to flirting with him. I stood my ground and refused to admit to something that wasn't true, but that's when things got weird. After that, everything became really awkward. For the next 6 months, we still followed each other on Instagram, but the interactions became less frequent, mostly just exchanging memes. The whole situation left me feeling uncomfortable and grossed out. He wasn't the idol I had thought he was, and I don't feel like I owe him anything, but I still feel weird about the whole thing. My friends and my boyfriend were also weirded out by his behavior. I never thought my idol would make me feel so uncomfortable, but here we are. So, the question is, AITA for offending one of my idols? I feel like I was just trying to protect my boundaries and deal with an uncomfortable situation, but I wonder if I overreacted by making those jokes and standing my ground. I, 25M, have been dating my girlfriend Emily, 19F, for about a year now. Things between us have generally been good, though there has been some tension recently, mainly because of my best friend Sarah, 26F. Sarah and I have been friends for years, long before I started dating Emily. A while back, Sarah and I had a brief fling, but we agreed to keep things platonic once I started dating Emily, both out of respect for my relationship and to avoid any unnecessary drama. Despite our past, Sarah and I remained very close friends. There is, however, some history between Sarah and Emily. They've had a few disagreements in the past, and Emily has never been too comfortable with Sarah and me hanging out, especially given our history. I've always reassured Emily that nothing inappropriate happens between us, and I've respected her boundaries by keeping things strictly platonic with Sarah. Now, here's where the issue started. Last night, Sarah invited me out to go clubbing. It wasn't something we had planned ahead of time, but she asked if I wanted to join her, and I figured it would be fun to go out with a close friend for a change of pace. I was in the mood to let loose, and Sarah seemed like the perfect person to hang out with. We went to the club, and while we were there, we both started drinking. It wasn't my intention to get too drunk, but the night got away from me. I was having a great time dancing and chatting with Sarah, and before I knew it, several hours had passed, and I hadn't checked my phone in a while. Meanwhile, back home, Emily had started texting me, asking where I was and why I wasn't responding. I didn't see the texts right away because I was caught up in the moment at the club. When I finally checked my phone, I saw a string of messages from her, all asking if everything was okay and why I was ignoring her. I quickly typed back a message saying, "I'm with Sarah, just having a drink. I'll be home soon," figuring that would reassure her. When I eventually got home, Emily was clearly upset. She told me she felt disrespected and hurt that I hadn't responded to her messages sooner. She said she felt like I had intentionally ignored her and that it made her feel unimportant. She also mentioned that she was insecure about me being out with Sarah, especially given our past, and she didn't trust Sarah and me hanging out alone, regardless of my reassurances. Emily admitted that she didn't trust Sarah, and she felt like I hadn't checked in enough or communicated clearly enough while I was out. I tried to explain that I was just out with a friend, having a drink, and that nothing inappropriate was going on. I told her that I hadn't meant to upset her and that I didn't think it would be such a big deal. I reassured her that Sarah and I are just friends now, and I've always respected Emily's boundaries when it comes to Sarah. But Emily wasn't convinced, and she was still upset. She said I wasn't putting in the effort to make her feel secure in our relationship, and that my lack of communication made her feel like she wasn't a priority. Looking back, I realize I should have been more mindful about responding to her texts and keeping her updated. I get that my lack of communication probably hurt her, and I understand why she feels insecure, especially given her history with Sarah. But at the same time, I didn't think it was a huge deal to be out with an old friend. I thought she'd trust me by now, considering I've always been clear about my boundaries with Sarah. So now I'm wondering, AITA for not responding to my girlfriend's texts while I was out clubbing with my best friend? Should I have been more attentive to Emily's feelings? Or am I overthinking this? I, 24F, have been in an otherwise healthy relationship with my boyfriend, 26M, for about 4 months now, but there's been an issue that's been really bothering me. It all started with a situation involving a Dungeons & Dragons campaign that my boyfriend, a mutual friend who was also the DM, and a few others from our social circle were playing. I was part of the group, and initially I thought everything was fine. But as the campaign went on, I started noticing some things that made me feel uncomfortable. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being treated differently from the other players. At first, I chalked it up to the fact that the DM's brother was also playing in the campaign. He had a tendency to backseat his decisions and give unsolicited advice, and I wondered if that was the reason I felt singled out. He would often speak to me in a condescending tone, which made me uncomfortable, and I couldn't help but feel like it was because I was the only woman in the group. However, I tried not to make too much of it because I didn't want to overthink things. But it wasn't just him. I noticed that my presence wasn't always welcomed, and that others in the group didn't seem as receptive to my input. The situation escalated when I found out, through a friend, that the DM had been complaining about me behind my back. Apparently, they didn't like how I played the game and thought I was ruining the experience for everyone. The complaints were things like me asking too many questions, getting caught up on insignificant details, and worst of all, accusations that I had tried to bend the rules, which was a complete lie. I was shocked and hurt, especially because these issues had never been addressed with me directly. Instead, the DM chose to talk about me behind my back. When I confronted the DM about it, their apology was half-hearted at best, and it seemed like they were trying to deflect blame rather than take responsibility for their actions. At that point, my boyfriend and I decided to stop attending any future sessions. After a couple of weeks of silence, our friend, the DM's brother, noticed that my boyfriend wasn't hanging out with the group anymore and confronted him about it. When my boyfriend explained that he didn't feel comfortable being around people who had treated me like that, our friend blew up. He got defensive and the situation spiraled from there, with more people getting involved. The conversation turned ugly, and our friend began tearing into me, accusing me of causing unnecessary drama. He even said some incredibly hurtful things, like claiming I hadn't really tried to get to know anyone else in the group, and that people felt like they had to walk on eggshells around me. I know these things aren't true. When I was first introduced to the group by a mutual friend, I was friendly and tried to make an effort to hang out with everyone. I would plan regular events, help out when anyone needed anything, and tried to include everyone. But over the past few months, I started facing some health issues that made it hard for me to keep up with everything. I had to cancel or skip out on some plans, and after that, people pretty much stopped talking to me altogether. I felt left out and unappreciated. To hear that people were now saying I didn't make an effort when I had been nothing but kind and considerate to everyone felt like a slap in the face. At this point, I've come to the conclusion that if these people didn't want me in their lives, I didn't want to stick around either. I told my boyfriend that I didn't feel comfortable with him hanging out with people who don't like or respect me, especially given how they've treated me. He's still close with these people, and I know he values their friendships. But I feel like if he's going to continue being friends with people who have treated me poorly, it's a sign that he doesn't fully understand or respect my feelings. I don't want to be controlling. I don't want to tell him who he can or can't be friends with. But at the same time, I can't help but feel hurt and uncomfortable knowing that he's still associating with people who clearly don't care for me. I'm feeling stuck between wanting to protect myself and not wanting to come across as controlling in the relationship. So, AITA for asking my boyfriend to stop hanging out with people who don't like me? Should I be more understanding, or is it reasonable to ask him to distance himself from them? I, 29F, have been dating my boyfriend, 28M, for 2 years, and we have a generally good relationship. Recently, though, a situation occurred that has left me questioning if I was in the wrong for getting upset with him. Last night, I started feeling extremely ill. I had palpitations, a massive headache that lasted for at least 5 hours, and my blood pressure was reading 167/109, which is dangerously high. Concerned, I went to the ER with my mom and brother. While I was there, the doctors gave me fluids and reassured me that my blood pressure monitor at home might have been inaccurate, and that my actual blood pressure was only slightly elevated. I ended up staying at the ER for about 3 hours. During that time, my boyfriend checked in with me every 45 minutes, which I really appreciated. He was genuinely worried about me, and he made sure to send me messages to see how I was doing. When I got home, I was still feeling a bit shaken up, but I wanted to call him and tell him everything in detail about the experience, especially since I had been so scared during the whole ordeal. However, when I asked if we could talk, he said he couldn't take the call because his parents were asleep in the room with him. He explained that his relatives were awake and hanging out right outside the room, and the only private space in the house was a small dressing room, which was between his family's room and where the relatives were gathered. He said, "Even if I'm taking a shit, everyone could hear." I get that he values his privacy, and I can understand how difficult it might be to find a quiet space when you're in a situation like that. But at the same time, I thought that my needing to talk to him after coming back from the ER should be a priority, even if it meant a little discomfort or some awkward questions from his relatives. In my mind, if he truly cared about me, a few minutes of inconvenience would be worth it to comfort me and help me feel supported. When I expressed my frustration to him, he then tried to call me, but by then I was already very upset. I was fuming at the fact that he hadn't even made an effort to call me earlier when I had specifically asked for a conversation. I didn't want to talk to him anymore, and in my anger, I ended up blocking him on our main communication channel. Something he had previously mentioned really upset him when his ex did it. This situation has really made me reflect on our relationship dynamics. For context, I've made several sacrifices for him in the past. We live about an hour apart, and when we meet up at my friend's house, I always go out of my way to fetch him with my car, even though it's not the most convenient for me. His house is closer to mine, and he never offers to drive me when we meet up in my city. Additionally, when we go on dates, he charges me about $10 for gas, whereas I've never asked him for anything when I pick him up. I initially tried to overlook this, understanding that he's the breadwinner for his family and doesn't always have money to spare. But after a few times, I expressed that I felt it wasn't fair, and he immediately adjusted, which I appreciated. But with the ER situation, it felt different. It felt like he was only willing to make an effort when it was easy for him, and that hurt me. I felt like he wasn't prioritizing me the way I needed him to, especially in such a vulnerable moment. I know he's a private person, and I understand that he didn't want to make things awkward in front of his relatives. But at the same time, I thought that when I needed him most, he should have made an effort, even if it meant a little discomfort. I realized that blocking him was probably a bit extreme, and I've been thinking about whether I overreacted. On one hand, I genuinely felt unimportant and unsupported in a situation where I needed him most. But on the other hand, I don't want to be controlling or unreasonable. It's just that this situation tapped into some deeper insecurities I've had in the relationship, especially regarding the sense that he tends to only do things for me when it's easy for him. So, AITA for getting mad and blocking him over the phone call? Or was I just being unfair given his privacy situation? Should I have been more understanding of his circumstances? Or was my frustration justified? I've been dating my boyfriend for a while now, and his sister and I have always had a rocky relationship. To be honest, I've tried my best to get along with her because I understand how important family is to him, but she has a really short temper and often takes her frustration out on me. For the longest time, I just let it slide. I'd apologize even when I didn't feel like I did anything wrong, just to keep the peace and not upset him. After all, I know how much he values his family, and I didn't want to come between them. However, things recently took a turn for the worse. His sister completely flipped out on him and told him that he had to choose between us. She straight up asked him to pick between her and me, and this whole situation has been tearing him apart. I can see how it's eating him up inside, and I knew I couldn't just sit by and let her manipulate him like that. I decided to confront her directly, though admittedly, I didn't keep my cool. I told her that it was absolutely cruel and manipulative to force him into a position where he has to choose between his sister and his partner. I told her she was being unreasonable, and she hadn't even given me a chance to explain myself or have a conversation about whatever issues she had with me. It felt like she just wanted to create drama and make him feel guilty for something that wasn't even his fault. After our conversation, she told me I wasn't welcome in her home anymore. For context, my boyfriend lives with her, while I have a place of my own. I'm honestly scared that she might try to kick him out as well. When I asked her why she was being so harsh and not answering my questions, she admitted that she hadn't even been reading my texts. She was just sending her own messages and ignoring mine. That hit me hard because it felt so one-sided, and it just made me feel like I was talking to a brick wall. I'm genuinely worried that she might escalate things and push him to make a decision that will hurt him. In a moment of frustration, I sent her a text that I'm not proud of. I called her childish and cruel, saying that forcing him to choose between us was unfair and unnecessary. I told her she was being selfish and that she would rather hurt him than let go of her pride. I said I was tired of dealing with her lies and that she needed to stop acting like a child. I also told her that, as an adult, she needed to resolve her issues with me directly instead of taking it out on her brother. It wasn't a kind message, and I realize now that I could have said things differently, but I was just so upset at how manipulative she was being. When she responded, it wasn't even about what I said. She simply told me that she didn't care about me, didn't care about our relationship, and that I was a stranger to her. She said I ruined everything, but she didn't even acknowledge anything I'd said in my message. That's when I realized that she wasn't even reading my texts properly, and everything I tried to say had just fallen on deaf ears. Now I'm left wondering if I was wrong to snap at her like that. I feel like I stood up for my boyfriend, but at the same time, I know I could have handled the situation better. I didn't want to escalate things or cause more tension, but I was just so frustrated with the way she was treating him. So, am I the asshole here for confronting her the way I did? Or was I justified in standing up for my boyfriend and telling her how I really feel? So, my friend, Jen, 28, female, called me around 11 to 12 p.m. on Halloween night, and she sounded a bit unsettled. I was already in bed, watching TV because I had work the next day, but I agreed to hear her out since it sounded like something strange had happened. She explained that she went out to a bar/party with two couples. One couple she's known for about a year, and the other one, a newer couple that she's only been friends with for a couple of months. The night started out fine, but things took a turn when one of the girls from the newer couple, let's call her the less-known friend, suddenly left without saying much. Jen thought it was weird but just assumed something was up with her friend. They all wrapped up their night, and Jen mentioned that the boyfriend of the girl who left, the less-known friend, was still there and seemed a bit lost. The better-known couple asked him what he was doing next and if he had a ride home, and he looked to Jen and asked, "Well, what are you doing tonight? I want to hang out. Can I go with you?" Jen said no, she was heading home, but then offered him a ride because she was driving and he didn't have one. The couple seemed a bit concerned and asked if she was sure about giving him a ride, but Jen said it was no big deal, so they all parted ways. Jen then told me that when the guy got in her car, he started acting really strange. He was getting too close to her and seemed flirty. She mentioned that when she was dropping him off, he wouldn't answer her questions about where he lived and kept trying to steer the conversation toward, "Why don't we go to your place?" He even got a little physical, like putting his hand on her, and she felt really uncomfortable. She managed to drop him off and leave, but she felt creeped out and called me as soon as she got home. I was concerned and asked if she was okay, and she said she was fine, just feeling weird about the situation. After hearing all this, I couldn't help but ask her why she didn't just let him take an Uber home. It seemed like the most logical thing to me. I was thinking if he was drunk and acting weird even after his girlfriend had left, why would she put herself in that position at all? Especially since it was so late at night, she didn't know him well, and the bar wasn't far from where he lived. I told her I felt like it would have been better for him to just get an Uber or have his girlfriend pick him up, especially since she didn't know the guy that well and it could have been unsafe. Jen responded by telling me I was blaming her for the guy's creepy behavior and said I was implying that it was her fault he acted that way. She got defensive and said that I was accusing her of doing something wrong when she was just trying to be a good friend to him. I tried to explain that I was just worried about her safety, but she snapped and said that I wasn't being supportive and that I clearly didn't care about her well-being. She accused me of being a woman hater and said I wasn't an ally to her. The argument escalated quickly, and things got heated, especially since we've been friends for almost 9 years. Now I'm wondering if my reaction makes me the asshole. I wasn't trying to attack her, but I did express concern about why she'd put herself in such a potentially unsafe situation, especially since the guy was acting weird from the start. But Jen seems really upset and now believes I'm judging her for doing something that was supposed to be a nice gesture. Am I the asshole here for questioning why she gave him a ride instead of letting him figure out another way home? My little brother is going to ruin his life. I, 23F, am worried about my brother, 18M. He's always been the problem child, unfortunately, born addicted to heroin due to our mother using while carrying him. Our grandparents took us all in when he was just a baby, so he doesn't see our real parents as mom/dad, just our grandparents. Again, always been a troubled kid, fighting at school, getting detention, beating up our other brother, etc. Our grandpa passed away when he was only 11 years old. He was the closest with him, and that really messed him up. Few years later, our other brother also passed when he was only 17 from heart complications. My little brother was 14 when this happened. Ever since then, things have gotten out of control. How to help him, he doesn't want my help. He doesn't want to talk about anything. All he wants to do is go out drinking daily. My grandma is still his guardian and he lives with her, but she's older and sick, she can't control him. He threatens our grandma, getting in her face and screaming at her. He won't get up and go to school, he won't go to work. Literally all he does is drink and smoke here and there. He used to at least go to school, was involved with sports. He's very strong and athletic, but I can tell he has lost the passion for life. I'm scared he's going to hurt himself, hurt my grandma, get hurt in a drunk driving accident. He doesn't drive, but his friends do, and they boast about drinking and driving. I just don't know what to do. He doesn't respect me or our grandma. We just want what's best for him. He's so mean on top of all these behavior things. It would be different if he was at least kind, you know? My grandma is at her last end with him. Once he graduates, if he can. He hasn't been to school in months. She's kicking him out. He won't be able to make it in life. How can I help him change? Have you ever experienced this with a loved one? I'm scared he's going to end up like our parents. And my brother will really be the only family I have when our grandma passes, hopefully in a long time. Update. I've asked him if he wanted to hang out with me this weekend. If he's with me, at least he won't be out getting into trouble. He usually never wants to hang out and will say he's busy so he can go party, but hopefully since it's close to Christmas he will want to hang with me. It's so hard trying to be close to him because he genuinely would rather be with drinking buddies over me. But at least asking will show him I'm trying my best. Fiancé won't budge on his family Christmas traditions to work with mine. My fiancé, M, 28, and I, F, 29, have been together for 3.5 years. I grew up in a family with 4 kids and my parents have been married for 34 years. Our extended family is really small. I only have 4 younger cousins and lives back home on the East Coast where I'm from. So I was used to doing Christmas just the 6 of us, my parents and siblings, for the majority of my life. Some of my best memories are just relaxing at home with them, eating my mom's amazing food, watching movies, and opening gifts. We would also get dressed up and go to church on Christmas morning. My parents don't drink either, so for me family time has never involved alcohol. Unlike my fiancé's family. My fiancé only has 1 sibling and his parents are divorced but still good friends. He has 4 cousins on his mom's side, and they all have significant others, so it's about 20 of us. Every Christmas Eve their tradition is to get together at one of their homes in the early afternoon, and they do an Italian feast and drink a lot and play games. These parties will literally last until 2 or 3 a.m., which leaves no room to do anything else for the night of Christmas Eve, which is not what I like. My fiancé and I have spent every Christmas Eve since we've been together with his mom's side for that party, because what he prefers for holidays is being surrounded by his family and partying with them. This has always seemed like a touchy subject I have tried to not complain about because I know it makes him happy, so I just go along with it. So far our plan is to still attend the party this year on Christmas Eve. On Christmas Day, the past few years we have opened gifts with his mom in the morning, then gone to his dad's side to celebrate with them and open gifts. My parents moved out of town about 1.5 years ago, so we aren't even able to do anything with them for Christmas unless they're in town. In my ideal world, my fiancé and I would only go to his mom's side's Christmas Eve for dinner for a few hours and then leave, and do our own little traditions. On Christmas Day this year, we were originally going to travel to New York to see my family, but ultimately decided to stay in town and save money on traveling. So my alternative was he and I could spend all of Christmas Day together, just us, since we would be with his family for most of Christmas Eve. It's our first Christmas in our new house and first Christmas being engaged. I wanted to at least have some special time for us as a couple for Christmas because it's my favorite holiday. And relaxing at home, opening gifts, eating good food, watching Christmas movies. It may not sound like much, but I love it. My fiancé originally sounded excited at the idea of us doing that together, but he is now telling me that that would be boring and doesn't sound fun to him to sit around at home all day when we have the whole week off of work to have alone time. He also said that my family Christmases sound lame and at his family's they actually have fun. I took that personally because I would hope that my fiancé would be excited to spend Christmas Day with just me and try to create our own traditions. And having alcohol/partying involved shouldn't be the determining factor for fun. I pointed out that I've already made a lot of sacrifices with my preferred holiday traditions in order to appease him, and he said he didn't care. That made me even more upset. Sorry this post if so long. TLDR, I'm just asking for some neutral advice because my family doesn't live here anymore, and I only have one friend in the area, so I'm not sure how to handle this. Boyfriend has repeatedly forgot to get me Christmas and birthday gifts. He's now upset because I don't feel like getting pizza with him. I, 21F, have been dating my boyfriend, 21M, for a little over 4 years. The first year he was great about gifts and making me feel loved and remembered. After that, I didn't get anything. I would remind him months, weeks, and days, even the day before my birthday or Christmas. Not once has he planned to take me anywhere or bought a gift ahead of time. I have never unwrapped a birthday present from him. I usually get upset, obviously, and cry. Then we go out and he usually buys something that I pick out. I hate this. I have told him I hate this. I give him hints all year. I straight up tell him what I want. Last year he bought me a silicone ring that wasn't my size and was a pattern I didn't like. He did not return it to get the size I wanted. So no gift. This year he just didn't get me anything at all. Like 2 weeks after my birthday, I saw a purse I wanted at a thrift store and he bought me that. We aren't super well off, but he spends hundreds of dollars a month on tools and parts to add onto his cars. He also spends money on video games and useless subscriptions he doesn't use. I don't want him to spend money on me. Over the years I've told him repeatedly that my perfect birthday would be getting flowers, a handwritten note. Hard on this because I love notes and he claims that he can't write, so that's why he never does it. And then a dinner date. That's literally it. I feel like it's not crazy to ask for just that for my birthday. I don't know if I'm looking for advice or just pity, but I'm so exhausted of this. He works on his birthday in a couple days, so we had planned to go to get pizza at his favorite spot after he had his first therapy appointment today. Therapy place is in the same town as the pizza place, which is an hour away. Well, we're both sick, so he canceled his therapy. This morning I asked him, "So we're not going anywhere today?" "No plans." And he confirmed that we didn't. Now all of a sudden he's really upset that we aren't going to get pizza still. I'm obviously confused, so I tell him I don't really want to go because he doesn't have therapy anymore, we're both sick, and I don't eat pizza. We'd also have to take my car as his needs new tires and the roads are snowy. Now he's in bed sulking because going there for my birthday was the only thing I wanted. Is that guilt tripping? I'm too close to him to figure out if I'm overreacting or what I should do. I want to make him happy and celebrate his birthday like I always do, but I can't let myself do it. I get emotional and sad every time I try to plan anything. Another catalyst for this is that I live painting. Love it. I'm really artistic and I have been trying to get him to join me in creating anything for the last 4 years. He never has. He's refused painting, making ornaments, drawing, everything. I have been really bothering him about it the last 2 weeks because I always humor him when he wants me to join him in helping with his cars. I am not mechanically gifted and it's not the most fun for me, but I like spending time with him and seeing him do what he loves. I guess I need advice on how to get him more involved and what I should do about his birthday and Christmas. I already have gifts picked out for both. What do I do? I don't think I'd be happy if I blew him off on his birthday. I want to celebrate him. What's the best way to make sure that I'm happy and he's happy without being petty or vindictive? My husband won't take PTO. This is the subject, my 32F, husband, 34M, and I have fought about the most in our relationship of more than 10 years. Unless we have a big, pre-planned international or group trip, he refuses to take PTO. He has been at the same company his entire career and I have begged him every year to take all his PTO and he never has once. Every year now he lets weeks expire. I have tried for years and I cannot get through to him no matter what I say. I would never get him to take a day off here or there, so I rarely try, so the holidays are really the worst times for this for our relationship. I have been asking him for more than a month about his plans for this holiday season for PTO and when he wants to take off for it. I am off all through the holidays starting Monday and he has known that. My parents are in town most of next week. He has just kept saying he'll think about it. I am left for a work this morning. I get back Saturday. So I felt like last night was the last chance to get an answer. I asked again and he still just said he would think about it. I asked why not take off. He had no reason not to. He said he would think about taking Christmas Eve off when we already planned to take my parents to a museum they requested we go to. He said he could just not work so much and come to the museum, but for the life of me I cannot understand why he wouldn't just take the day off instead. I know it is not pressure from work. He did such a great job on a project earlier this week that his boss told him to take the rest of the day off and he worked anyway. I have told him countless times how much I would like for him to take his PTO, especially at the holidays, so he is aware that this bothers me. He just tells me I'm inserting myself too much into his business, essentially. He says it bothers him when I try to control what he does. Feels like a trap because then I avoid the subject, but it always blows up eventually. I don't know what to do. I feels like just hanging out with me is not enough of a reason for him to not work, even if the time would expire anyway. How do I convince him to take his PTO? Line's been crossed. Do I, 31F, kick my BF, 29M, and father of my 3 children out right before Christmas? I, 31F, have been with my boyfriend, 29M, for 10 years. We have 3 children together, live together, dogs, the whole thing. He's a good person, we usually enjoy each other's company and hang out together and laugh, etc. Many times our disagreements stem from being stressed from both of us working, bills, 3 small kids, not usually because one of us did something to cross the other. In the beginning of our relationship he cheated on me, denies it, but for sure did with this girl. We were younger at that point, no kids, and a bit off and on. I took him back and swore to him and myself that if I ever found out he talked to her again I'd leave. Well, fast forward 6 years and I see he has her added as a friend on FB. This had to be recent, like within the last few days. Noticed because he said to go look at this dude's page, a client of his, and both their names start with the same letter, so as I typed, she popped up. We've been going through a rough patch, we're struggling financially, don't have much support with the kids. Just both stressed and snappy. He is not a talker, I try to communicate and he shuts down. Literal silent treatment, and if he comes around I feel like I'm his mother lecturing him and he will usually just say, okay, yeah, maybe nods his head in agreement. Long story short, recently I've tried to explain that I too am stressed and work full-time and need the same amount of me time. As he gets, he often hangs out with his friends after work or stays for a few beers and I have to call and ask him to come home. But instead of listening / trying to understand, it's just silence. Maybe a day or 2 of being nicer than usual and then back to normal like nothing happened. So now that I've seen he has this girl added as a friend on FB, I texted him to say what the actual fuck. Silence. He doesn't take me seriously, clearly. I don't want to break up our family. Our kids adore him, but I can't live in silence. And asking him again to block this girl makes me feel like a fool. For all I know, they've been messaging back and forth saying God knows what. I feel like the only way he'll take me serious is if I keep promise and end things. I will be heartbroken and my kids will too, but this feels like a line crossed that can't be reversed. I wish he'd just get his shit together. I, 25F, am worried about marrying into my boyfriend's, 25M, family. Me and my boyfriend of 7 years have recently started going ring shopping. I'm really excited for the next chapter of our lives, but I can't help but be worried about marrying into his family after some recent events. Long story short, my boyfriend has a younger sister, 11F, who recently came out and stated that her stepfather has been touching her since shortly after his marriage to her and my boyfriend's mother last year. A case was opened with a social worker and cops were called. The mom was ordered not to have the stepdad around the sister. One day while the sister wasn't home, she had the stepdad over and they were cooped up in the house together. My boyfriend ended up finding out about this along with the rest of his family, which caused division in the family for a bit. The stepfather was eventually asked to take a lie detector test, which, to my surprise, is still being used despite its lack of reliability. And the results indicated he was not guilty of any inappropriate behavior toward the daughter. Shortly after, the mother decided to move him back into the house with her and the daughter. This entire situation has left me feeling uneasy and has completely changed how I view his mom. If we get married, I'm not sure how I'll navigate a relationship with her. I don't trust her judgment, and it's hard to imagine feeling comfortable with her around my future kids. To believe her daughter's potential abuser and some lie detector test over her own child is wild to me. Any advice? My girlfriend, 26F, and I, 28M, have different views on gender roles in finances. Advice please. My girlfriend, 26F, and I, 28M, have been together a little over 8 months and are planning on moving in together soon. Recently we had a conversation about what finances could look like if we go married eventually, and the result seems pretty mismatched. She believes that men should always provide and should feel honored to sacrifice so the woman they are with can have an elevated lifestyle. Specifically, she said that by virtue of being a woman she deserves more of the monthly income as personal use funds to maintain an elevated lifestyle, and would want my income to cover the majority of our expenses. When it comes to the numbers, this means to her to have a more 60-40 or 70-30 split on expenses. I believe in more of a partnership perspective where we combine our incomes in a joint account and budget from there. Rather than I pay for this or she pays for that, my ideal is we pay for this with our combined income. I would want to combine our resources to build a life together rather than having these separate lifestyles and constantly having to have conversations about who is paying for what. Any assistance on bridging this gap? Girlfriend, 30F of 4 years, is obsessed with the idea of loyal me, 32M, possibly having an affair. I love my girlfriend dearly, and while I have made boneheaded mistakes and owned up to them like any responsible guy would, I have never been and will never be disloyal to her. We both entered our 30s together. We have even lived together for a year. Overall, I believe we have been a solid couple, and on a foundational level, love each other very much. We have been through thick and thin, we speak each other's love languages, and we know how to resolve conflict. I've made clear that I want to spend the rest of my life with her, and we're both ready to seal the deal once the timing is right due to potential career changes and uprooting. Over the past 6 months or so, something has changed. Communicating with her has gradually become more difficult, and she has trouble maintaining eye contact with me and distances herself from me. She regularly questions where I am and who I'm with. Every time I speak with her and show her evidence of my day, I still feel a constant air of suspicion from her, and oh really? A raised eyebrow, so on. Even in the middle of a weekday, where there's nowhere else I should be except at the office, replying to her that I'm at my desk doesn't seem to satisfy her curiosities. Having a platonic interaction with any other woman causes my girlfriend to raise defenses, questioning how I know them and that I must be attracted more to them than her. Then there's her recent entertainment choices. Her books, music and podcasts, films, and socials are full of love affairs, web sleuthing, true crime, romantic comedies, dating reality. Whenever I walk by or tune in with her, the general theme is how terrible men can be. I feel like she's falling down the same kind of rabbit holes you hear about conspiracy nuts falling into. Her algos are definitely encouraging her state of mind. Intimacy has crumbled between us. She barely wants to hold my hand. I hug her and can feel her being physically repulsed. Flowers, her number one favorite gesture, are no longer adequate. I know she has her own abandonment trauma, and I have been very patient by either navigating it with her or giving her space when appropriate. I've brought her with me to couples counseling, but in her mind, my eagerness to repair things is an admission of guilt for adultery that never happened. This week, after 4 sessions, she decided to stop going with me. That is her choice, and I will continue trying to be positive and supportive, while clearly expressing how troubled I feel. I want to work this out. I want to know where this all stems from, and why she suddenly trusts me so little after being with me for this long. Instead of offering some transparency in return, she continues to be the victim, continues to criticize me, when I feel her state of mind is hurting both of us equally. What else can I do to show her that I still love her to bits, and we can still be the loving, trusting couple we were not too long ago? My F24, addict boyfriend, M28, continues to push the boundaries, but I don't want to feel like I am ruining his life. I'll start out by saying that the first year of our relationship was great, until the drinking started. He is a binge drinking alcoholic and had about a 1-month relapse 1 year into our relationship. It was bad, but it ended quickly. I thought all was well. We had started to heal all the negativity of that time in our relationship until the last few months. Come to find out, he was addicted to kratom as well as alcohol. He spent all of his money on kratom because apparently it helps him to not drink. During this time, he ended up moving in with me for what I communicated was only going to be a 2-month-long period. Long story short, that ended up being 6 months. His addiction only worsened and he didn't have a job, so he ended up stealing at least $300 of my own money and spent it on kratom. I catch him in that and he promises to quit. Meanwhile, while he is quitting kratom, he relapses again on alcohol. And it is so bad. So bad. All while he was talking to another girl behind my back, while still claiming to love me. I end up having to have his parents come and move him out of my house. Well, now he is homeless and he is blaming it all on me again. Because, surprise, surprise, his parents kicked him out. He ended up getting COVID, and so I let him stay in my house while he was recovering since it was like 12 degrees outside. I have tried to explain to him that our relationship is over, but he claims that I broke up with him, but he hasn't broken up with me. He is still jobless, in debt, has no job prospects, and just continues to live at my house. He claims that he is sober, but my gut feeling is telling me something else. I know that I messed up in letting him come back, but I am confused on how I should move forward. I feel like I understand that I am being manipulated, but it's a constant battle between my head and my heart. I am trying to figure out how to deal with this situation without completely feeling like I am wrecking his life and appending my own. How do you navigate living with someone who has a different standard of what a clean house is? Context. I, F33, grew up with a mother who would yell if you left a half-finished glass of water on the kitchen table to come back to. She was OCD about cleanliness, still is, and the house felt almost sterile. This made me despise living like that. Been with my M31, over 4.5 years, and for the first 2+ years of us dating, he worked out of town during the week and only slept at his place Friday through Sunday. He can't cook, so he'd only eat out while he was home and never used his kitchen. He'd watch TV and shower, but those were really the only areas of his house he'd use, so his house was basically not lived in. We've lived together 1.5 years, and before I moved in, renovated the basement to finish off 3/4 of it with 2 bedrooms and a living area. BC, I have 2 kids, 13, 10. The house isn't big by any means, and when I moved in, I had to throw/get rid of a lot of my things. The rest I put in the back bedroom that wasn't being used, and then bought some shelving to put the rest in the basement. I added a few things to the kitchen, but all his stuff, he has quite a bit, stayed exactly where it was in his bedroom and living room upstairs. I'll admit, things are a teensy cluttered, but it's truly not that bad. Now to the issue at hand. We both work full-time. Some weeks he works more hours than me, and some I work more than him. I do all the cooking, dishwashing, kitchen cleanup, and laundry. We trade off on who vacuums and does the bathroom. He also does yard work when needed and will shovel when we get snow. Generally speaking, he comes home and sits on the couch to play video games. I come home and have to tend to my kids and then prepare a meal. I don't like eating out much and prefer to make food at home 7 days a week. I save most chores for the weekends, but do load the dishwasher a few times a week. Pots and pans have to be washed by hand. He's made comments about how he's settling. BC, the house upkeep isn't to his standards. I feel this is an exaggeration as the house is lived in. We're here all week long as he's been working in town during the week for the last 2.5 years, but not dirty. And him saying he's settling honestly hurts my feelings. BC, I'm a very generous partner, and if my cleaning standards don't exactly match up to his, that seems very minuscule in the grand scheme of things. He brings this up at least once every month or two, and I honestly don't know what to say at this point. Yes, there is dust that accumulates in between dusting. Yes, the floor gets sand, dust, etc. on it in between vacuuming days. Yes, the bathroom gets dirty in between cleanings. BC, there are 4 people using it. These things all seem really normal. Not everything is perfectly spick and span during the week. And the kids' rooms do get a little messy with their belongings and such, but if they're told to clean up, they do. He thinks they shouldn't have to be told and should just automatically do it. He also thinks he shouldn't have to bring up that he feels the house needs tidying and it should just be done. I'm also 7.5 months pregnant and really flippin' tired. I hate to use that as an excuse, but I'm doing my best. So my question is for people with roommates or partners who have a different idea of what a clean or livable house is, how do you handle when you or the other person can't see eye to eye on what a messy house means or how often cleaning should be done, etc.? What's the point of moving on after wasting my 37/F youth and fertility waiting on my husband M/36? How long can I F/37 stay in my 10-year marriage to husband M/36? I think I F/37 am finally ready to consider leaving my tumultuous 10-year marriage to my husband M/36. I have deep anguish and pain when I think about how I have poured all of my love, energy, and efforts into my husband. I have always felt like I have been more committed and have much more invested into my marriage than my husband has been. In fact, over the past 10 years, the issues I have dealt with are as follows. Husband has never been aligned with me regarding similar timelines or goals. Husband has had an unchecked drinking problem for most of our marriage. Husband cheated on me with at least 20 women, including a relationship with a 19-year-old college student in 2019. Husband was not ready to have children when we married at 30. He started resenting me when I asked to start trying until he started cheating on me when I was 32. I have waited and now my fertility has run out as we finally started TTC when I was 34. I then had 2 back-to-back ectopics. Now I am tubeless and need IVF. I am 37 now, and this year, as I was getting ready to do an embryo transfer, I caught my husband drunk texting his ex-affair partner, the college student. Now he says we cannot go forward with IVF as we have marriage problems. My head is spinning as I wanted to be a wife and mother so badly, and it's all slipping through my fingers, and I wasted the past 10 years giving everything up for him. I know I need to leave, but what's the point after I gave up my youth and fertility waiting on him? What will I get now? Please give me the strength to walk away. My 25F coworker, 25F, keeps asking for rides home, and I'm starting to regret it. My 25F coworker, 25F, keeps asking for rides home, and I'm starting to regret it. Hi. I recently started a new job at an adult retail store. I absolutely love my job and my coworkers. It's the first time in a while where I feel like I blend in very well with the team. Everyone has been incredibly kind and welcoming. One of my coworkers is Nina, fake name. Nina is really nice and very funny. The only downside to Nina is occasionally she has really big mood swings. She just becomes like a deflated or rough version of herself, and it's honestly uncomfortable to be around sometimes. The mood swings are so bad that I was even warned about it by several coworkers before working with Nina. Nina doesn't have a car, so whenever we're closing together, she'll ask for a ride. At first, I really didn't mind it at all. I didn't ask for gas money. I considered her a new friend, so I didn't mind doing it out of pocket. Sometimes she'll ask to stop at a store on the way home, which is kind of annoying, but I'm trying to be nice. Last week, a few days before payday, Nina asked me for money. She said it was for weed. Which I get it, times are tough, but I don't feel comfortable giving money to coworkers, and plus it's almost the holidays. I told her no and just explained I was kind of broke myself. She seemed to understand but got really quiet. The car ride almost felt a little awkward, but we still had casual small talk. I spoke to another coworker about it and was told apparently Nina asks everyone for money. She pays them back, but it annoys everyone. She also apparently will try to guilt people into giving her the money. It had gotten to the point where management has had to talk to her. Last night Nina and I were closing together. She came in a bad mood but seemed to cheer up a bit until the end of the night. She was dead silent the whole 15 minutes to her house, and I felt like a shitty unpaid Uber. It's not even that she has to be my best buddy the whole time, but she put her headphones in and seemed annoyed if I asked for a reminder with directions. I'm not sure if I want to continue giving her rides home after that, but I'm unsure how to get out of it. I'd still like to be her friend, but I just feel a little used. I'm not sure if this is even worth mentioning, but she slowly started asking for rides later throughout the shift. When I first started, she'd ask for a ride as soon as she clocked in. She now waits until an hour before closing. I know Nina wouldn't be completely fucked without a ride home, as her roommate has picked her up/dropped her off at work before. I'm a very big people pleaser who struggles with conflict, so any advice is helpful. Adding an edit, as I wrote this down in my notes app a while ago and need to add this. So I decided to have my partner drop me off at work and pick me up later. It was a passive way to not have to give Nina a ride home. So Nina arrived to work in a very rough mood. She was distant to everyone and even a little rude. Eventually she acknowledged my existence and asked for a ride home. I explained I didn't have my car and that my partner was picking me up. She immediately got quiet and just walked away. She went into our back room and was possibly crying for 20 to 30 minutes. I eventually went into the back room to our employee bathroom. The bathroom smelled of weed and perfume, so that's just great. The whole shift she barely spoke to me, and it honestly made me feel so anxious. She ended up getting a ride from the security guard on shift. I said, "Hey, can you text me when you get home? It's not that I don't trust the security guard, but you never know," to which she replied with, "Sure." I never got the text and I just spent the whole night worried. My partner thinks I did the right thing by telling her no, especially if that's how her attitude is. I'm trying my best to unlearn my people-pleasing habits, but I just don't know if I'm doing the right thing. My boyfriend, 24, puts no effort into gift giving for me, 25. We have been together for 4 years and there hasn't been a single time he's gotten me a gift I've liked, used, asked for, or wanted. We are very close, we spend so much time together. And it's a constant disappointment every time, and now I'm starting to feel as if it's intentional or that he genuinely just doesn't care to try. I work in social media and I have an overabundance of clothes, shoes, makeup, etc. in those categories. I tell him constantly, "Please don't get me anything clothing related, I seriously don't have the room anymore," and almost without fail, he gets me clothes every time. And the funniest part is, he gets me business casual clothes. I work from home as an independent contractor and have zero need for business casual. Even thought I do have a handful of BC options if I need them. This year I suggested not doing gifts because it's really disappointing to put so much effort into someone else's gift knowing that I'm going to receive a half at said gift. He wanted to do them anyways, and as nicely as I could, I asked him to please not get me clothes. I asked for a piece of jewelry or some household items for my cats. He got me clothes and shoes, a blouse and some flats. I'm so irritated and angry, and at this point, it feels like weaponized incompetence, and I hate to sound ungrateful, but I'm genuinely at a loss for words now. How do I approach this? Me, 30F, with my BF, 34M of 1 year. He has started sagging his jeans after finding a new style. I don't like it. My 30F, BF, 34M, and I have had basically a perfect relationship for the past year. Recently he has lost a lot of weight and has started to figure out his new style. He got Depop and started to buy used clothing he wanted to wear when he was heavier but couldn't really pull off. He started to order stuff like True Religion jeans because he wanted to, ironically, dress like a rapper called Chief Keef for a Halloween party we were invited to. I guess part of the style means wearing your pants below your butt even though you have a belt on. After the party he would wear this outfit out, and it was kind of funny initially, but since late October he ordered even more of these outfits and now often dresses like this. It came to a head last night where he met me at my family's house dressed in the True Religion jeans below his butt and a popped collar polo shirt. I was mortified and my parents were not happy about this. For context, he and I are both white and grew up in the suburbs. He works an IT job and does very well at it and has basically no interaction with black culture outside of what he sees on the internet. The other day he mentioned wanted to get twisty dreads, which would be crazy because he is losing his hair and it wouldn't even work probably. We have had a number of convos about this and they all basically end with him saying he is having fun and enjoying his new body after having zero confidence his entire life. Is this a deal breaker? My BF has an irritating alarm problem and it's ruining our relationship TLDR. BF's alarms disturb my sleep, then at the weekend he hardly gets up. It's coming between us. My BF, 26M, and I, 30F, have been together almost 2 years. He moved into my home about 3 months ago, and I've been really struggling with his sleep behaviors. I sleep poorly most of the time. I'm a light sleeper and need a carefully concocted layout of pillows to be comfortable. I can set one alarm to wake me and get up straight away. I work a 3-week rolling rota, working different days each week, including a full weekend every 3 weeks. It's mostly 9 to 5 working from home, but 2 days per week, I work 10-11-hour days away from home. This is what my weekends of work are. A normal night's sleep for me is 5-ish hours. A really good night is 7-8 hours, and a really bad night can be anything as low as an hour/90 minutes. In contrast, My partner works Monday through Friday 8 to 4 and has every weekend off. He works just 5 minutes from home and can leave for work at 7:50. His alarms, though, for the love of God, they drive me insane. He sets alarms to get up and shower before work. It's one at 6:20, another at 6:30, 6:40, 6:50, and 7. He then sometimes decides not to shower that morning and will set an alarm for 7:30 and go straight back to sleep. Problem is, his 6:20 alarm goes off and that's me awake. I'll then sit and listen for every alarm going off for the next 40 minutes. It's demoralizing. The weekends are then the other side of this. He simply will not get up. If I do not drag him out of bed, he will stay asleep until 12/1 p.m. He gets frustrated that he's not up sooner, but seems to then make very little effort to change it. So, my problems. My sleep is suffering in the week. I'm not getting enough sleep for work and am regularly sleeping on the couch so that I don't have to deal with his alarms, although he has them so loud and leaves them running for ages, so I hear them anyway and I end up having to walk upstairs to tell him to turn them off. He knows his alarms disturb me and we've talked about it before, but nothing seems to change. I have to wake him up in stages at the weekend. A gentle nudge, then make sure he's sat up, then make sure he's on his phone, then encourage him up with a brew or breakfast. I've told him it's like dealing with a toddler. 5 more minutes, then sit up, 5 more minutes, then out of bed, etc. He was embarrassed by this and agreed it's not acceptable, yet here we still are. I've expressed that and feel he doesn't respect my need for sleep either and he keeps apologizing. Essentially, he gets lots of sleep, and I get very little and it's coming between us as I'm starting to resent him for it. Please give me advice on how to manage this. I feel like I don't want to live my whole life exhausted and battling with him and his sleep pattern. Thanks in advance. Partner using a texting app to send me nasty texts. Partner sent nasty texts to me through texting app 1, M29. Received a text from a random number last night. The text states, "Hey, my name. You fat fucker, why are you sending your little d*ck pics to my boyfriend you a***hole and trying to meet up? I'll be sending the screenshots to partner's name." I wasn't offended and kinda laughed it off and ignored it and went to bed. However, I woke up to my partner, M40, who left our bedroom the next morning with his phone unlocked. So, I checked his phone to see if he had received any texts. Well, I looked at his recently deleted and the name number did in fact text him, but the text said, "Test." Right then and there, I knew we sent that nasty message to me. I'm a little dumbfounded by this and really don't know what to make of it. I know lately he's been a little more upset and has been showing signs of insecurity, e.g. looking himself in the mirror and saying that he's not muscular enough, hair graying. I don't know what to make of this. I don't know what I should do from here. Should I confront him? But if I do, he'll likely just deny and get upset I was on his phone. We've been together for 4 years. How do I, 38M, approach fiancé 28F about how emotional priming of future gestures takes away from the positive impact of them? I feel frustrated because it seems like my finances' negative assumptions about my intentions or follow-through on thoughtful gestures end up undermining the meaning behind those actions. Is there a word to describe that? I feel like Germans would have a word for it. For example, I started writing her love notes to show my appreciation, but when I missed one day, she told me she knew I wouldn't keep it up and that if I really wanted to, I would have. That hurt because I do want to continue doing it, but now if I do, it feels like she'll think I'm only doing it out of obligation because she nagged me, and if I don't, it looks like she was right. This isn't the first time this has happened. When I was planning to propose, I was excited and wanted it to be a meaningful and memorable moment for us, but she kept saying I'd never do it or that I didn't care marrying her. Meanwhile, I was planning her mom to fly into town because she wanted her mother there, and I had already spoken to her father about my plans. By the time I actually proposed, I felt like the joy had been drained out of it because her doubts and commentary had already overshadowed the moment. I did already speak to her about it, trying to emphasize that her doubts or negativity, even if unintentional, diminish the value of the gestures I make. But this led to an argument and frankly I wish I never brought it up. I'm not sure how to approach the topic because we both seem to get defensive and end up arguing over it. Ironically, out of things that are supposed to be special like gifts and loving gestures, I feel stuck in a no-win situation. If I do something thoughtful, it feels like it doesn't count, and if I don't, it confirms her negative assumptions. This pattern makes me feel unappreciated and like my efforts aren't seen for what they are. I want to talk to her about how this affects me and how we can both work on building trust and appreciation for each other's gestures. I love her and want to make her happy, but this dynamic is hurting both of us. My girlfriend, F28, pressures me, M30, to get married. What should I do? I'm 30, male, and wondering whether to take the next step in the relationship with my girlfriend, 28. She is really eager to get married soon and wants me to propose as soon as possible. We have been together for 2 years. In many ways, the relationship is great, in other ways, it is not. I understand that no relationship is perfect, and I do want to eventually settle with someone and accept their imperfections. But I am uncertain whether she is the right one. I wrote out the good and bad things below, and I am wondering if someone with more life experience can gauge whether some of the downsides have the potential to destroy our relationship in the long run, or if some of the upsides might carry us through a lifelong happy marriage. The great things about our relationship first. We have always had some hobbies, funny habits, or inside jokes going on that make us enjoy our time together. For a while, we obsessed over board games and played together every single night. We sing together in weird voices all the time. We talk to each other in a funny accent, etc. I've never met anybody as weird as her before, and she's my kind of weird too. That feels very unique. We have a very similar education level and income. Finances and education in the relationship are very balanced, so we rarely fight about money and sometimes have intellectually stimulating conversations. I get along well with her family. We pretty much agree on plans for the future. Having children, how to live, etc. The downsides, she has a lot of mental problems, mainly anxiety and a fear of abandonment. When she feels that way, she gets very angry, often throwing and destroying objects. I then need to calm her down for hours, of course often at the most inconvenient times, like late at night or when I really have to be somewhere. It also means I cannot openly share some things with her because she interprets them as me wanting to leave her. An example. My commute to work is 90 minutes one way, and I would like to move closer to my work. She mostly works from home. One night while we were getting ready for bed, I suggested looking for places closer to my work and she completely lost it, screaming, slamming doors, etc., and we didn't sleep for 3 hours. My work is demanding and I need to get up early. I feel she does not or cannot respect my time when feeling anxious. I have lost a lot of sexual attraction to her, I believe because of the angry outbreaks she has. I still find her just as beautiful as on day one, but I find it very difficult to get in the mood. This has unfortunately been going on for about a year. Both of us somehow believe we have made huge sacrifices for the relationship, but there is little mutual appreciation for these sacrifices. It's hard to explain both sides of the argument fairly, but for example, I feel that I gave up a lot of job opportunities to live with her, close to her family, and the type of lifestyle that she wants, high-rise apartment building in an affluent part of the city, whereas I would have much preferred a low-key neighborhood with a backyard maybe closer to my work. I wish she would acknowledge that. More, she has some concerning character traits. I caught her lying a few times. I caught her rummaging through my old personal letters once. She knows everything about my ex-girlfriends by looking them up online. She has had serious fallouts with her 2 previous roommates and does not acknowledge any wrongdoing. For one of them, I really think she was at fault, but I cannot bring any of that up, and she wants me to act unfriendly on the rare occasions we see that roommate. She has a shopping addiction, though nowhere close to being financially dangerous, just annoying to have so much stuff in the house. I'm at loss at what to do. She pressures me to propose to her, and I do really love her. But there are so many red flags. I worry about getting caught even deeper in a relationship that's not good for me. Compared to my previous relationships, she has her professional life very well under control, but I do probably feel the least happy with her, mostly due to her mental problems. On the other hand, I seriously think that a ring on her finger could ease her anxiety and fear of abandonment. She got cheated on in the past and as a child was temporarily left by her parents. It's hard to summarize what she's been through, but the point is that I can understand her fear of abandonment. When we moved in together, I noticed her feeling better about this already. But proposing to her would be a gamble that she actually gets her mental problems under control, and if not, I might be trapped. Has someone been in a similar situation? What did you do and how do you feel about it retrospectively? I could benefit from someone sharing life experiences. Update. The responses are really unanimous. I should say that she is in psychiatric therapy and taking medications. It has made things better, but all the examples I described above happened after she started medication. Just on Monday, we had another incident. They are definitely not working that well. I am thinking of doing this. I will scout out apartments that I could move into and prepare everything for a potential breakup. I will confront her and see if I can get an earnest commitment to work on her character. If things don't go well, I will end the relationship and let her family know so that they can stop her from doing anything to herself. My boyfriend's mom, 55F, is saying I am manipulating him, 22M, into hating his family. I posted this in another sub but was told that I might have more luck in an advice sub. This is my attempt to hear some opinions. Hopefully it doesn't get swallowed into the void. My boyfriend, 22M, and I, 23F, have been dating since last August, 16 months, and have been very happy. We have good communication, trust, and security, and most importantly, we laugh together so much. Everything has been great, but with great things comes compromise. My boyfriend, Vincent, grew up with a twin sister, Megan. He has always been the more outgoing and infectious one, while his sister has sat on the sidelines and has been the calmer of the two. I think a lot of the problems in their relationship stem from jealousy on Megan's part. Vincent was on a path to becoming a national athlete, has excelled in everything that he does, is working on a master's currently, etc. Megan hasn't accomplished nearly as much, and I can see where she might be resentful. Since the age of 10, Megan has bullied Vincent. One instance that he has shared with me that has never left the depths of my brain is that one time during high school, he thought that he had ruptured an organ. He was in a lot of pain, couldn't lift his arms above his head, and was physically struggling. He asked his sister if she could please help him by carrying his backpack. She told him no and didn't help him on their walk home. This is one of many times over the years when his sister has mistreated him. Their mom, Deb, 55F, has never really punished Megan. Instead, when Vincent defends himself, he gets in trouble and is told this is just how his sister is and that she apologized so everyone should just move on. They are 22 years old now, and Deb still gets involved in their affairs and navigates it like this. Vincent had been in low contact with Megan until they were about 19. She had claimed that she wanted to have a relationship with her brother and was trying to change. It has been going exactly how you think. I have seen Vincent's sister blow up at him multiple times since we've been dating. I usually try and stay out of it because I do not want to make it any worse than it already is. However, this all came to a head last week. We had gone over to Megan's house for a small get-together. We were the first ones to arrive and we had brought some of our own snacks and good energy. She asked us if we wanted to play music and we said sure. I pulled out a bag of chips and she made a snarky remark about whether or not they were from her pantry. Okay, just a misunderstanding. Vincent and I were dancing and having fun. Her friends started arriving and the dynamic shifted. I had already felt unwelcomed, but when her friends arrived, it became painstakingly obvious. Everyone eventually went to the garage to smoke. Vincent and I were not invited, but Vincent is a social butterfly and went to the garage anyway. I came with him because we were there to have fun, so let's try to have some fun. They were passing around a joint and offered us some. Vincent said, "Oh, I'm down, I just don't want the roach." Well, we were in luck because they had just packed a bong. He takes a drag and the down stem comes out along with the bowl and falls. The down stem chips and it doesn't seem like a big deal, but oh no, let me tell you. Megan gets in Vincent's face and is yelling at him, calling him fucking stupid, and repeatedly saying, "Well, are you going to buy me a new one? Where are you going to get it?" Overall, being so ugly. I am sitting in the further side of the room, steaming. I try to diffuse the situation by saying, "Hey, it's no big deal, they sell these at smoke shops. You can easily find another one." She turns to me and without missing a beat says something along the lines of, "They don't always have the right size," or something to that effect, but in the most snarky, condescending voice you can ever imagine. I get upset and I tell her, "Megan, don't fucking talk to me like that." She immediately comes after me. What a shock. Instead of arguing about what is happening in the present though, she starts throwing shit in my face that happened during Thanksgiving, saying I'm negative and I had my nose in a computer the whole day when we were supposed to be around family. To preface, I was writing my college thesis. I had a lot of deliverables due that Saturday and I was panicking. I was anxious, yes, but it felt really low of her to go there with me. At this point, I am trying to not lay my hands on her. My adrenaline is skyrocketing and I am trying to calm myself down. The room eventually goes silent. My boyfriend tried to break the tension by making jokes about the situation. They were funny, but I couldn't bring myself to laugh. Megan again makes some snarky remark at me to try and get a reaction. At this point, I just left. Vincent came outside to talk to me and calmed me down after about 15 minutes. He went back inside to collect our stuff and Megan tried to follow him outside. He told her now was not a good time and we left. We ended up going home and watching a movie and had a good rest of our night. I was supposed to go to Christmas with him and his family, but after this I decided it was better if I stayed home with my own family. I felt that it would be uncomfortable for me to go and it would not be a good atmosphere for me. Plus, it would require me to take off time from work, which I can't afford to do anyway, and find pet sitters. So honestly, it worked out better for me to not come anyway. The next morning, his mom called and they discussed what had happened the night before. Well, I was mistaken when I thought she would see our side of things and be sympathetic. No, she takes Megan's side while saying, "I am not defending what she did, but you need to forgive her and move on. Sounds like you're defending her in my opinion." I also want to note, I still haven't received any type of apology or outreach from Megan. Vincent then gives me the phone. I am not interested in talking, but I humor it because I have involved myself in such a way that rocked the boat. His mom immediately starts attacking me, telling me that I need to step in line or you will be outcast and sidelined. What the fuck? I defended myself against mistreatment over a donstem and I am being told that if I didn't just lay down and take it, I am no longer welcome. His mom continues saying how hard she's tried to accept me and that she just wants her son to be happy. She then goes on to do exactly what Megan did and throw Thanksgiving in my face along with other things, including me demonstrating vulnerability with them and talking to them about current events in my life that had caused me distress. Well, no more. Deb is trying to bully me into coming to Christmas, saying if I do not come it will cause a rift that will be very hard to overcome. All of the blame for the situation is being placed on me. I am being used as a scapegoat as to why Vincent doesn't have a strong relationship with his sister. As if this has not been going on for years. Deb texted Vincent, saying I am manipulating him into hating his family and that I am very hard to like. She insinuated that all of his friends just deal with me for the sake of Vincent. I'm really hurt by all of this. I am unsure how to navigate this any further. I am worried about it damaging my relationship with Vincent. I want to move past this, but it feels like I have an elephant sitting on my chest. How should I move forward, and is the relationship with his mom and sister worth saving? BF's friendship with coworker feels like dating. How do I handle this? I, F29, and my boyfriend, M31, have been together for 7 years, but we're currently going through a bit of a relationship crisis because we've been neglecting our connection amidst everyday routines. 3 weeks ago, we talked about it for the first time. Shortly after, he was away for work for 2 weekends. After his last trip, he talked a lot about a female colleague he had gotten to know better during the trip, even though he had rarely mentioned her before. A week later, he told me he planned to grab coffee on Sunday with 3 coworkers. I found that surprising because Sundays are usually reserved for us, and he sees his coworkers every day anyway. 15 minutes later, he admitted that he actually planned to meet only this female coworker but was worried I wouldn't be okay with it. I was disappointed but told him it was fine. That Sunday, he left around noon but didn't come back until 8 p.m. He said they had gone for a long walk and then had wine together. I told him I would have appreciated it if he had let me know it was going to be that late. Later, I saw that he messaged her after the meeting saying, "Yeah, I thought it was chill too." That gave me a bad feeling because, to me, the meeting felt like a date. I brought it up with him and he admitted it wasn't well thought out. After that, I noticed they were texting each other every day. I didn't read the messages. On Thursday, they went out for lunch together. She had already asked him on Sunday, and he said he didn't want to cancel because it would have been rude, even though he was on vacation. I couldn't understand it, especially since their first meeting had already hurt me, and he himself admitted that it could look like a date from an outsider's perspective. That weekend, he asked me if it was okay to meet her again on Monday after work. After long discussions, I agreed but made it clear I didn't want it to drag on too long. Later, he told me they had spontaneously gone to the movies after grabbing something to eat, which again felt very date-like to me. He acknowledged this, apologized, and repeatedly assured me he wasn't interested in her romantically. I trust my boyfriend and don't believe he's cheating or hiding anything from me. However, I don't understand why he can't take a break from seeing her for a couple of weeks, especially during a difficult time in our relationship. I'm unsure if I'm overreacting by wanting that. He has other female coworkers he texts regularly, but he never meets them in his free time or while he's on vacation. Am I the asshole for telling a mom that I don't care about her daughter being dumped by my son? My son Dylan dated Melanie since the 10th grade. They are now juniors. Dylan dumped her last week and Melanie took it hard. I got a text yesterday from Melanie's mom to call her. She wanted me to bring back Melanie's sweater that she left at our house a couple of weeks ago. I said sure. I told her she could pick it up. The mom came and said that I should talk to Dylan about how much he hurt Melanie. Melanie was very attached to my son, and my son broke up with her in the wrong way. I told her I wasn't talking to my son about anything. They're high schoolers and stuff like this happens all the time and Melanie isn't special. My son doesn't owe you or Melanie an apology for not wanting to date her anymore. Dylan wasn't mean about it. He just said that he didn't want to be in a relationship because he wanted to spend more time with his friends. The mom said that was BS. I said I don't care. He doesn't need a reason. It's none of your business. She asked me if I cared about how my son treated his girlfriends. I said, do you care how your daughter treat their boyfriends? She said it was different. I told her I had nothing left to say except I don't care about her or her daughter. Am I the asshole for getting into a huge fight with my brother on Mother's Day? Let me explain the situation. I'm a 42-year-old woman, and my brother is 44. To put it bluntly, my brother and I have never been particularly close. Growing up, he tormented me, and I mean really went beyond typical sibling rivalry. There were times when he stuck up for me, but honestly, it never really made an impact. Throughout our childhood, he acted like he was better than me and was spoiled by the rest of the family, except for our parents, who tried to keep him grounded. He was always the golden child in their eyes, especially because he's the only male child left to carry on the family name. So, flash forward to this year, and we have an incredibly tense situation. Our mom, who had been recovering from 3 major surgeries the previous year, asked both of us to come over to help around the house on Mother's Day. I had helped her a lot during her recovery, taking her to appointments, assisting with day-to-day tasks, and my brother hadn't been there to help at all. So when our mom asked for his help, I thought it was the least he could do. She also asked my family, my fiancé and our kids, to come over, but said we didn't need to come until lunchtime, so there was no pressure. When we arrived, everything went completely south. I had recently had a baby, and since my brother hadn't met her yet, I went over to introduce her. I was excited for him to meet his niece, but instead of a warm greeting, he immediately told me to get out of his face. I was absolutely shocked and confused, but it didn't end there. He started screaming at me, accusing me of not helping mom enough, which made no sense because, like I said, she had specifically asked him to help. I hadn't been asked, and I was already there to help with whatever she needed. The argument escalated, and at some point, my brother took his kids, who are 15 and 11, out of the house and sat in his car. I was still reeling from his outburst, but I briefly spoke to his wife as I was packing up my baby and getting ready to leave. As I was getting our kids into the car, I overheard him calling my baby a bastard. I froze. I could not believe my ears. We were raised in a family where this kind of language was never used. Our mom was a hippie, and our grandmother always said that babies were blessings, no matter how they came into the world. For him to say that, especially about a baby he'd never even met, felt like a betrayal in a way I can't describe. I was absolutely devastated. Took me a while to even process what had happened. I didn't know what to do. I'm still hurt. Our mom has suggested that I put it behind me and just move forward, forgiving but not forgetting. But right now, I can't see how I can just move on from something like that. The worst part is he came to my wedding, but we barely spoke. My maid of honor even made sure she was between him and my baby during the reception because I just didn't feel safe or comfortable around him anymore. I can't help but think about how I would have reacted if the tables were turned. I would never speak about my nephews that way. Just because two people are raised in the same household doesn't mean they share the same values or perspective. I'm trying to figure out if I'm being unreasonable by not wanting to forgive him right now, or if my feelings are valid. So, am I the asshole for getting into a huge fight with my brother on Mother's Day and struggling to forgive him for what he said about my baby? Should I just put it behind me like my mom says? Or is it okay to feel this hurt and distance myself from him? Am I the asshole for leaving my friends because I found their behavior immature and offensive? Let me explain. I'm 14 years old, living in the Philippines, and recently I made the decision to leave my group of friends because I couldn't tolerate their behavior anymore. My friends are mostly around my age, 14 to 15, and I've been friends with them for a few years, but over time, I realized their behavior was affecting me negatively. It all started with a guy named John, 14. I met him back in 7th grade, and when I first got to know him, I noticed that he had a pretty toxic sense of humor. He would joke about things like racism, fascism, sexism, and homophobia, and at first I didn't like him much because of that. But I eventually got used to him and thought maybe we could get along. However, he never really grew out of those toxic jokes. He'd make racist slurs like the N-word and glorify things like Nazi ideology. I didn't agree with it at all, and it bothered me, but I still tried to tolerate it because he was fun in other ways. Later on, during summer school, I met another friend of John's, Shad, 14. Shad was even weirder and more extreme than John. He would watch H** in class and talk about the same things. Racist jokes, homophobia, and glorifying horrible events like slavery and Nazi Germany. One time, he even suggested those themes for our Christmas party. Things like, bring back slavery, and N*Z Germany. I tried to tell him it wasn't funny, but he didn't take me seriously at all. It was clear that he just didn't care about the impact of his words. Over time, I started realizing that my emotional intelligence was higher than theirs, and I understood that they saw their offensive humor as just for fun. I tried to brush it off, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. They were toxic, immature, and never took responsibility for their actions. They just acted like nothing was wrong and kept going. One incident that really pushed me to my breaking point was when my stuff got disturbed. I had bought some school supplies with my own money, and they were damaged and hidden. I got really angry about it, but I didn't want to hurt anyone, so I kept my distance instead. To make it worse, Shad made a comment about me being embarrassing for getting upset over it. He said something like, crashing out like a toddler is embarrassing, aura, which really irked me. I told him he had no right to say that, especially since he constantly relied on me for school supplies. I even accidentally hit his hand in the moment and immediately apologized. But he didn't care. Their behavior kept getting worse. They would joke about gory and disturbing topics like snuff videos, which made me feel disgusted. They never took responsibility for their bad grades or their behavior. Instead of trying to improve, they'd complain and expect others to fix things for them. I realized that their immaturity was draining me, and I couldn't stand it anymore. I tried talking to another friend of theirs, Vestro, 14, about how I felt, and surprisingly, he was supportive. He agreed with me and told me that leaving the group was a good decision because I wasn't the problem, they were. After that, I decided to cut all contact and leave the group completely, including on social media. Now, I feel a little conflicted. Most of them aren't as fortunate as I am, and I can understand why they might act the way they do. But I don't think that excuses their behavior or their lack of self-improvement. They talk about loving God but act in ways that contradict the basic values of decency and responsibility. So, I guess my question is, Am I the asshole for leaving this group of friends because their behavior was draining and offensive to me? Was I wrong to walk away? Or should I have stuck around and tried to help them change? I'm open to hearing if I made a mistake so I can learn from it and improve as a person. Am I the asshole for airing private words? Let me explain what happened. I, 24M, have been friends with a group of people for years, and recently, I found out that one of my friends, Bill, also 24, has stopped speaking to me. I started wondering if I might be in the wrong. So here's the story. There's a girl in our group, Tina, who has an undeniably curvy figure. She's large-chested, has a little bit of a belly, and, to put it bluntly, has a junk in the trunk type of body. Some people might see it as a blessing, others might think it's a curse, but either way, she's undeniably attractive. Bill, one of my longtime friends, has an obvious crush on her, although Tina doesn't seem to know it. Last summer, our group had a rooftop pool party with a potluck. While the guys were setting up the food, the girls went to change. Tina came out in a two-piece swimsuit, and Bill made some filthy jokes about her body. To summarize, he said things like, it should be illegal for her not to star in dirty videos, and made crude comments about the size of her chest, implying she was supposed to act a certain way because of it. At the time, it was all jokes, but they were definitely disrespectful and inappropriate. A little while later, Tina came out in a sundress and a girl jacket that didn't zip up, so she was covering up. She wasn't getting into the pool, and after a bit, one of the girls went over to ask if she was okay. That's when I, somewhat buzzed, yelled out, Bill was being a creep, and now she doesn't want to swim. It's Bill's fault. I then started chanting shame and yelled out everything Bill had said about Tina's body. Bill turned beet red, and Tina's face immediately fell. The group immediately started arguing about it. Tina said she wasn't swimming because she didn't want to look like she was doing it on purpose. She didn't know what Bill had said, but she mentioned feeling like it was inappropriate. She said she was tired and decided to go home. After that, the whole vibe of the party changed. Tina left, and things were a little tense. The girls in our group defended Tina, but most of the guys seemed to think that since Bill hadn't said anything directly to Tina or in earshot of her, it wasn't that bad. They argued that it wasn't disrespectful because Tina didn't hear it. But I disagreed. I thought it was weird and inappropriate. It's not her fault that she looks the way she does, just like it's not my fault if someone thinks I'm unattractive. Here's where I think I might be the asshole. After the incident, Tina never spoke to Bill again. She avoids him now, and she hasn't addressed it directly, but she made it clear she didn't want anything to do with him. The issue is, Tina never heard what Bill said, and I'm the one who made it public. Bill didn't say anything to her face, and I'm the one who aired it all out. I didn't think through the consequences of my actions in that moment. Bill felt comfortable saying those things around me because, in our friend group, we all joke around a lot, including me. I've made my share of crude jokes, so maybe that made him think I was cool with that kind of humor. But now I realize that I'm the reason Tina found out, and it's my fault that the whole situation went south. To make matters worse, since I called Bill out publicly, Tina started distancing herself from him, and now the whole group is cold toward him. He's been excluded from hangouts and hasn't been invited to things, but I didn't notice until recently that he was deliberately not talking to me either. The whole situation has become more awkward than I thought it would be, and I can't help but feel guilty. So, am I the asshole for airing out private words and causing a huge rift between my friends? Should I have kept quiet? Or was I justified in calling out Bill for his behavior? I'm feeling like I might have overstepped, but I don't know if I handled this the wrong way. Am I the asshole for not inviting my friends anymore? I'm a 39-year-old woman, married, with no children, and I work from home with a flexible schedule. I've had the same group of friends for a long time, 2 from high school and 1 I met 4 years ago. I've always been the one to organize our outings and check in on everyone, but lately, I've been feeling a bit burned out from it all. Here's why. Friend 1 is also 39, works remotely, is introverted, and is raising her nephew as her own child. Friend 2 is 39, works in an office, is outgoing, and recently remarried, but has no children. Friend 3 is 27, an office worker, and we became friends as co-workers. She has a long-term boyfriend, no kids. I've always been the one to initiate plans with them, and for the most part, I've been okay with it. But recently, things have been feeling one-sided. Here's the most recent situation that made me rethink things. A month ago, I organized an outing with friend 1 and friend 2 to a place that required advance booking. I gave them a month's notice, and while friend 1 confirmed, friend 2 said she'd check and let me know. I didn't invite friend 3 because I wanted it to be a high school friends meetup. 2 days before the outing, friend 1 canceled, saying her son had a soccer game. Fair enough. I get that children's events take priority, but it didn't sit right with me. Friend 2, seeing this, immediately said she had a class to attend. I understood, but I felt hurt that she didn't give me a heads up earlier when she saw friend 1 cancel. The lack of communication and consideration felt off. I started to feel frustrated because I'm always the one initiating plans, and it seems like my efforts are never reciprocated. My husband suggested inviting one of his couple friends. They were excited to come, but the reservations were full by the time they could book. Still, they made an effort to see us, and it felt really nice to have that kind of energy around. In the end, it was just my husband and me on the outing. It was fun, but I couldn't help but feel a little bitter. I realized that I was the one always reaching out and organizing plans, and that none of my friends ever made the effort to initiate anything. This realization made me question the nature of these friendships. I shared my feelings with my therapist, who bluntly asked, "How does it feel to know these friendships only exist in your head?" It stung, but I knew deep down that I was the only one keeping these friendships alive. That's when I decided to stop initiating contact and see what would happen. Around the same time, I came across a post on Instagram titled, "When did we go from being a low-maintenance friendship to not being friends at all?" It resonated so much that I sent it to friend 1. She didn't respond to the message, but instead sent me a random reel, which felt like a brush off. I tried to bring it up to friend 2, and she apologized, saying she'd do better, but nothing changed. Friend 3 occasionally invites me out, but it's always during weeknights, which I jokingly refer to as mistress hours. I've told her that weekends work better for me, but she's always busy with other people. It felt like she only had time for me when it was convenient for her. So, I've decided to step back from these friendships. I don't want to be the only one putting in the effort anymore. I've started to reconnect with an old college friend, and I can feel that this new connection might lead to a more balanced and fulfilling friendship. Now, I'm wondering if I'm in the wrong for stepping back from my current friendships. Am I being too sensitive or unfair by not inviting them anymore and not making the effort to reach out? Should I have just kept trying? Or is it okay for me to let go of relationships that don't prioritize me? AITA for stepping back from these friendships? Am I the asshole for not being quiet in my apartment? I'm a 30-year-old woman living alone in an apartment. I've been here for 2 years now and work from home, so my schedule is pretty flexible. During the day, I usually make food, watch TV, or talk on the phone during my breaks. I wouldn't say it's anything excessive, but you can definitely tell someone's living here. It's not crazy loud, but there is noise, like you can hear my TV, the occasional phone call, etc. For the most part, my neighbors have been extremely loud. I think they have about 7 to 8 people living there, and they're often yelling, sometimes angry, sometimes happy, playing loud music or blasting TV shows/movies at all hours. They've even had parties that go until 2 to 3 a.m. on weekdays, several times a month. It's definitely disruptive, but I never complained about it or knocked on their door. I understand that living in an apartment means some noise is inevitable, and I've always just thrown in earplugs when it's too much. But recently they had a baby, and suddenly, the noise level from their apartment has dropped dramatically, since the baby wakes up at almost any noise. I guess they're trying to keep it quiet so the baby can sleep. But now, when I go about my day and make normal sounds, watching TV, talking on the phone, etc., I've started getting knocks on the wall or even at my door telling me to quiet down. I'm not being ridiculously loud, and I've always been understanding of their noise before, but I've had enough. So, I told them I wouldn't be any quieter in my apartment, because I'm just living my life and working from home. They didn't respond well to this, and now I'm wondering if I should have been more courteous. So, Am I the asshole for not being quiet in my apartment and telling them I won't reduce the noise I make during the day? Should I have been more considerate of the fact that they have a baby now? Or am I just entitled to live my life as I normally would? Am I the asshole for making plans with my own money even though I owe my mother? I'm a 16-year-old girl, F16, living with my single mother and her parents. We're in a working-class neighborhood, and while my mom has a good job, she spends a lot on nice things like holidays, school activities, and other extras. I'd say we're lower middle class. Here's the situation. In my country, students can skip the 4th year of secondary school and go straight from 3rd to 5th year. However, my mom insisted that I do something called transition year. It's a non-academic year with trips, workshops, and projects, and it costs money. I personally think it's a waste of time and money, and I'd have preferred just moving straight into 5th year, but I've been going along with it. Now, in October, my cousin, 13 years old, stayed with us for 2 weeks due to some personal issues in her family. She used my room while she was here, and after she left, I accidentally cracked the corner of my iPad screen by sitting on it. Long story short, it was under a stool when I sat down. I didn't really think much of it at first because the screen still worked and it was a minor crack. However, when my mom noticed it weeks later, she said I'd need to pay her back €100 for the repair. The problem is, I don't have a job, and my weekly allowance is between €10 to €15, which I use for school lunches and occasionally going out with friends. Sometimes I skip lunch to save up for other things. So, I don't have the money to just pay €100 back right away. With Christmas coming up, I wanted to get my nails done. Just a simple gel extension for €15. I asked my mom if I could go this weekend, but she told me I couldn't afford it, especially since I was also going ice skating on the 29th. I did the math in my head. Ice skating would cost about €30, including transportation, skating, and snacks. I currently have €32 on my card, and with my allowance coming this Saturday, I'd have €52 by the time ice skating comes around. If I spent €15 on my nails this weekend, I'd still have enough money for ice skating so I can afford both activities. I tried to explain this to my mom, but she wasn't listening. She insisted that I needed to pay her back for the iPad first, and when I pointed out that if I skipped both activities, it would still take ages for me to repay her since I have no income, she called me greedy. I got frustrated and snapped. I told her I wouldn't pay her back at all or buy her a Christmas gift. I feel guilty for saying that, but honestly, it feels like she's all about the money, and I don't have a way to pay her back quickly. Now I'm wondering if I was in the wrong for making my own plans with my money, even though I owe her. I regret snapping at her, but I feel like she's not being reasonable. So, AITA for prioritizing my own plans and not wanting to pay her back immediately, especially when I feel like I can't afford it. Am I the asshole for starting to blame my mother for my possibly messed up head? I'm a 22-year-old woman from Australia, and I feel like I'm at my breaking point. I've lived a pretty sheltered life and, until recently, I always thought my family situation was normal. But now that I'm entering adulthood and trying to figure out who I am, I'm realizing that my upbringing may have been a lot more toxic than I ever acknowledged. Here's some context. I grew up in a family where my parents were always fighting, loud arguments, violence, you name it. That's been the constant for as long as I can remember, and it still happens today. Despite all this, I still live with my parents because I'm not allowed to move out. I'm starting to feel like it's suffocating me, but at the same time, I love my family and we do have good times together. Let me introduce you to the key players in my family. My little sister, 18. She's a sweet person, but she's been homeschooled since she was 15, which I feel was heavily influenced by my mother. She doesn't have any friends and rarely leaves the house except for her part-time job, which my mom controls by limiting her to just 2 days a week. My dad. He works full-time and doesn't talk much. We don't have a close relationship, which has kind of damaged me, but I try to move past it. My mom. She's been a stay-at-home mom my entire life. While she's always been there for me and my sister, she has some obsessive behaviors that are starting to make me feel crazy. She spends almost the entire day cleaning, from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. The house has to be spotless all the time, and if I don't help enough, I get yelled at and told that I'm lazy. Even though I work full-time and help with the cleaning as much as I can, it's never enough. She also monitors everything I eat and gets upset if I don't eat the way she thinks I should. If I want to relax, I get guilt-tripped. If I take time for myself or hang out with my boyfriend, she makes me feel like I'm being selfish for not helping with chores. The house is so perfectly clean that it doesn't even feel like a home anymore. It feels more like a display model. If I drop something on the floor, I get yelled at. It's draining. To make things worse, she has controlled almost every aspect of my life. I had to turn down a proposal from my boyfriend because I knew my mom wouldn't approve of me moving on with my life. I feel stuck. She even tried to end my relationship at the start, accusing my boyfriend of horrible things he didn't do, just because he's from a family with health issues and because he's not perfect in her eyes. I feel like a prisoner in my own life. I'm scared to start university again because I know I'll be expected to drop everything to clean. And when I tried university the last time, my mom made it so difficult that I ended up dropping out, which she actually praised because it meant I could help clean more. It feels like I can't do anything for myself without her either making me feel guilty or trying to control me. My mom has even tried to control my boyfriend's life, telling him what he should eat and how he should live because she doesn't want me to move out. The worst part is that she still won't let me live my life. I have to get her permission to do almost anything. If I try to go out with friends or my boyfriend, I'm guilt-tripped and told how much she needs me at home. It's so emotionally exhausting that I just want to scream and run away. I can't even be happy for myself without worrying about how it will affect my mom. I'm considering leaving my boyfriend because I don't want him to put his life on hold for me. But at the same time, I feel like I've been robbed of the chance to live a normal life. I can't even enjoy simple moments like getting into university or achieving something for myself without feeling guilty. I just want to escape and be free. I love my family, but I feel like my mom has ruined me as a person. I feel stuck, trapped, and like I'm losing myself. I'm starting to resent her, and I hate that I feel this way. So Reddit, AITA for starting to blame my mother for my mental health struggles and wanting to run away to start fresh. Even though I love her deeply and know she loves me, am I the asshole for not wanting to be in the house while my mom has fun? I, 21F, live with my mother, 38F, and pay rent for my room in the house. We have an unspoken rule in our household: no fun or company when anyone is home. And by fun, I mean when my mom has a guy over or engages in anything that I'd rather not witness, given how thin the walls are and how close our rooms are. My room is next to hers, and I hear everything, no matter how quiet she tries to be. Recently, my mom met this guy who has stood her up a couple of times, and I've been understanding about it. I figured, okay, maybe he's not the best guy, but it's her choice. She agreed to not have him around when I'm at home, mainly because I'm not comfortable with it. I don't want to hear their private time through the walls. But last night, after all the previous times he stood her up, he shows up again, right when I'm home. It's about midnight, and I can hear their bed creaking, which made me lose it. I went into her room and I was absolutely furious. I ended up giving her an ultimatum. I told her that if he comes over again while I'm there, I'll either call the police or kick him out myself. I feel bad for getting so angry, but at the same time, I felt completely disgusted and violated in my own home. I've tried to set boundaries with her before, telling her that it's uncomfortable and disrespectful to have company over when I'm at home, but it always feels like my boundaries are ignored, or worse, she starts crying and saying that it's disrespectful for me to have boundaries with my parent. I've always gone out of my way to give her space when she's asked me to, and I thought this was a reasonable request. So now, I'm wondering, am I the asshole for getting so upset and making this ultimatum? Or was I in the right to feel this way given the situation? Am I the asshole AITA for asking my roommates to move out? My 26F husband, 33M, and I have a house together. My brother, 26M, was homeless for a bit, so we took him in. He's been living in a camper in our driveway. We have spare rooms, but he wanted his own space. Recently, his girlfriend, 25F, moved into the camper with him. Things were fine, but now it's been increasingly tough. We have expressed that my husband needs the bathroom between 11 and 11:30, but, like clockwork, the girlfriend ends up in the bathroom during that time frame. We added her onto our phone plan. I should add she is my best friend, and bought her a newer iPhone because she really needed it. The agreed upon plan was that she would pay the $15 a month for her service, but that never happened. She made maybe 1 or 2 payments and then nothing. The phone is now completely paid off, so we took it off our phone plan. When we gave her the heads up, all she said was, "Yeah, I just won't have any service." It's whatever. We have a house rule that you clean out the shower drain whenever you use it because it gets clogged fast. We have to keep bottles of Drano on hand because of it. Not only do they both not clean out the shower, she uses a sugar scrub that attracted ants. So my husband would go get ready for work but has to deep clean the shower to get the ants out. We allow them to store some things in the house, but it's starting to feel like a lot. When my husband's grandmother moved out, the girlfriend texted her asking grandma to move her things out of the closet or she would put them in the basement. They love to put their extra food in our fridge and freezer. I just had to clean out their Thanksgiving leftovers and wash all the pans because they kept forgetting. It's almost Christmas. We only charge them $100 a week for rent. They have access to Wi-Fi, electricity, water, extra storage, the kitchen and bathroom. Pretty much everything is included. Well, they stopped paying rent for roughly 4 months but continued to access everything like normal. When we asked about rent, they would tell us they aren't making enough to buy food, let alone pay rent. My brother is the only one working, trying to support both of them. His girlfriend refuses to get a job because of mental health. I completely understand that. I've taken a break myself due to mental health, but I reached out and got help. She isn't trying to get a doctor or find therapy. She's sitting in the camper playing video games and scrolling Twitter all day. We've decided we're turning the Wi-Fi off when we're all at work so she can't do those things anymore. So because of all this, we've asked them to start looking for a place. My brother has expressed not being able to support both of them and find a new place on one income. I feel bad, but I also feel like it's not my problem. Sounds harsh, but it's how I feel. My husband and I both feel used, like they aren't grateful for the 5 years of help we've given them. Are we the a-holes? Am I the asshole if I didn't get my BF any Christmas presents? My BF, 41M, and I, almost 41F, have been together 3.5 years now. We live together. He's usually a good partner, but we're both very broken people and tend to get into fights. He's also an alcoholic. While I love my partner dearly, he just can't seem to get his shit together. He doesn't have a car or a real bank account, nor any post-secondary education. He's mostly waited tables all his adult life. I changed careers 2 years ago, but I recently ended up in a position that doesn't pay very well. I make just enough to barely cover my bills and expenses. I have scrimped, saved, and sacrificed. I have a car, but it's barely hanging on. I started saving $20 a paycheck for Christmas shopping money and have lent my talents for extra cash. But I only have just over $100 to work with. 2 weeks ago, my BF quit his job before securing a new one first. He does this sometimes. While he did make an arrangement with his mother to cover his share of the rent because I cannot, I know. He will not be getting me anything for Christmas. He has been applying for jobs daily, however. I have 8 nibblings and a mother to shop for, and I'm already having to go super cheap on them. I was planning on getting my BF some nice things he really wants/needs. I already bought a pair of work pants for him weeks ago, so he's definitely getting those. But if I'm not going to get anything from him, I wonder if it would be fair or shitty if I didn't get anything for him. Whipta if I didn't? Am I the asshole for not prioritizing someone who isn't close to me anymore? Please forgive any mistakes in how I'm writing this. I'm a 30-year-old woman, and this is my first time sharing something like this online, so I'm not entirely sure where to start. I was friends with a woman who's now 28 for over 15 years. Back when we were younger, I always tried to be there for her and went out of my way to help whenever I could. She seemed to have a lot of personal struggles, and there were always reasons why she didn't have many friends. I felt like I needed to support her because, at the time, I cared deeply about our friendship. But as the years went by, her behavior started to change in ways that made it difficult to maintain our relationship. She became someone I couldn't have an honest conversation with because anything I said that she disagreed with would lead to an argument or her ghosting me entirely. Even when she made decisions that were clearly impulsive or problematic, like getting a breed of dog she wasn't prepared to care for or going back to a boyfriend who treated her horribly. I wasn't allowed to voice my concerns without risking a blow-up. At one point, she had to move in with me. I asked her for $50 a week to help cover the bills for the house, which I thought was a reasonable request. She refused to pay, claiming she couldn't afford it because she had to cover the train fare for her job, which was an hour away at Sephora, and to see her boyfriend, who was honestly a terrible influence on her life. Later, she asked to move into my parents' house, which was about an hour away. For reasons I still don't fully understand, she expected me to be the one driving back and forth whenever she needed to be there or do something related to that arrangement. I repeatedly told her that I couldn't cater to her schedule like that, and she acted like I was being unreasonable. This back and forth strained our relationship further, and we had several arguments during that time. Things came to a head when she broke up with her boyfriend and suddenly wanted to act like we were best friends again. By that point, I was fed up with her behavior. I told her clearly that I was tired of the cycle of her disappearing, reappearing, and expecting me to drop everything for her. I decided to step back and take some space for my own mental well-being. She had left some of her belongings at my house, and over the months that followed, she came by multiple times to pick them up, yet somehow never managed to take everything. This included times when she had an empty car and could have easily taken it all. During this period, I was still driving 3 hours round trip to visit her occasionally. Eventually, her mom bought her a car, and instead of focusing on getting her life together, she started talking to her ex again. I reminded her of all the times he had kicked her out and how I had to house and financially support her because of it. I told her I needed space and took that step for my own sanity. Fast forward a little. I hurt my back, and it was worse than I'd ever experienced before. I had always assumed it was just pulled muscles, but this time, a visit to the emergency room revealed I had degenerative disc disease. The pain was so severe I could barely walk without pain medication. Feeling vulnerable, I reached out to her, desperate for someone to talk to, and she ghosted me. I even apologized for the way I had reacted in the past and tried to explain why I had been upset, but she never responded. 8 months went by, and out of nowhere, she messaged me about some random items she had left at my place and at my parents' house. By this point, my parents were selling their home, and my partner and I had been clearing out and reorganizing our space to make it easier for me to navigate and rest comfortably. Most of the things she left behind had been either discarded or donated because she'd ignored me for months and had ample opportunities to take her stuff. The only thing of hers I might still have is a single item that I don't even know the location of, and honestly, I don't care to look. Am I the asshole for not wanting to waste my time and energy searching for something for someone who owes me hundreds of dollars and hasn't been there for me when I needed her? Some additional context to give you an idea of the kind of behavior I've put up with over the years. She once got into a heated argument with me because I asked her not to boil her menstrual cup in the same pans I use for cooking. She insisted on sleeping in my room for an entire month, despite my protests. During that time, she would cry all night and demand that we only watch one specific TV show because it was the only thing that comforted her. To this day, I can't enjoy that show because of the negative association. She would take excessively long showers, and when I asked her to shorten them, she accused me of being unreasonable and controlling. I've held so much of this in for so long, but now I don't care anymore. I'm done catering to her endless demands, excuses, and drama. So, am I wrong for not prioritizing her needs after everything I've been through with her? Am I the asshole if I didn't get my BF any Christmas presents? My BF, 41M, and I, almost 41F, have been together 3.5 years now. We live together. He's usually a good partner, but we're both very broken people and tend to get into fights. He's also an alcoholic. While I love my partner dearly, he just can't seem to get his shit together. He doesn't have a car or a real bank account, nor any post-secondary education. He's mostly waited tables all his adult life. I changed careers 2 years ago, but I recently ended up in a position that doesn't pay very well. I make just enough to barely cover my bills and expenses. I have scrimped, saved, and sacrificed. I have a car, but it's barely hanging on. I started saving $20 a paycheck for Christmas shopping money and have lent my talents for extra cash. but I only have just over $100 to work with. 2 weeks ago, my BF quit his job before securing a new one first. He does this sometimes. While he did make an arrangement with his mother to cover his share of the rent because I cannot, I know. He will not be getting me anything for Christmas. He has been applying for jobs daily, however. I have 8 nibblings and a mother to shop for, and I'm already having to go super cheap on them. I was planning on getting my BF some nice things he really wants/needs. I already bought a pair of work pants for him weeks ago, so he's definitely getting those. But if I'm not going to get anything from him, I wonder if it would be fair or shitty if I didn't get anything for him. Whipta if I didn't? My sister banned me from going on the family trip I paid for, so I canceled her ticket and we went on vacation without her. I'm 29 years old and come from a relatively close-knit family. There are 3 of us siblings. Me, my younger brother, 26, and my younger sister Bonnie, 24. I have a good relationship with my brother, but my relationship with Bonnie has always been a bit complicated. It's not that we don't get along, but she has always been a bit demanding. As the youngest, our parents often favored her when we were kids. While I've tried to let it go, her behavior has tested my patience on many occasions. Not just mine, but my brother's as well. However, his patience is thinner than mine, and when they're together, there's usually some conflict. Earlier this year, I received a good bonus at work, and with my parents' anniversary approaching, I thought it would be a great idea to take the family on vacation. We hadn't gone anywhere together in years, and it seemed like a fantastic way to reconnect and celebrate. I planned a week-long trip to Hawaii, covering all the expenses, flights, lodging, and activities. Hawaii was where my parents had their honeymoon, so I thought it would be a perfect way for them to relive those youthful days. When I announced the trip, my parents were thrilled, as expected. I knew my brother would appreciate the gesture too, but I was a bit unsure about Bonnie's reaction. Her mood is unpredictable. To my surprise, both of them were excited, especially Bonnie, who immediately started talking about all the things she wanted to do and the Instagram videos she planned to make. I was glad everyone seemed happy, but that moment of bliss didn't last long. Bonnie insisted on planning the vacation herself. I told her that since I was paying, I wanted to organize everything. She threw a fit, claiming I wasn't good at planning and that I should let her take over. This wasn't a suggestion but a demand. There were reasons I wanted to handle it myself. First, it was my gift to the family. Second, Bonnie has a tendency to be extravagant when someone else is paying. For instance, she'd book the priciest options without a second thought. I had carefully planned everything within my budget. My parents tried to mediate, suggesting that Bonnie could help if I was too busy. To keep the trip a surprise, I told them the activities would be revealed as we went along. Bonnie didn't like this and kept pressing me for details, saying she needed to shop for the right outfits. Eventually, I gave her the itinerary, hoping it would shut her up. But instead, she called me, furious about certain things she thought needed to be changed for everyone's comfort. Her suggestions were reasonable, so I made a few adjustments. This boosted her ego, and she smugly said, "See? That's why I should have planned this from the start." Reluctantly, I gave her limited access to my bookings, with strict instructions not to make major changes. She promised to stick to the guidelines but immediately announced in the family group chat that she was now in charge of the trip. At first, the changes she made were harmless, like suggesting matching outfits for the family. But a week before the trip, I discovered she had canceled some of the activities I'd booked and replaced them with ones she preferred. She even declared herself the leader of the trip and said everyone should follow her plan. Furious, I called her, trying to reason with her, but she stood her ground. She said I should let her handle it since she was better at planning. I firmly told her no, and that she had already done enough damage. She accused me of being controlling and hung up. That night, my parents called me. Bonnie had already told them her side of the story, and they wanted to know what was going on. I explained the situation without revealing too much to preserve the surprise. To my shock, they sided with Bonnie, saying it didn't matter who planned the trip as long as we spent time together as a family. Frustrated and unappreciated, I considered canceling the entire trip but decided against it. Instead, I stepped back from the planning and let Bonnie take charge. I I figured I'd just go along and enjoy the trip, even if it wasn't the way I'd envisioned it. However, things took a turn for the worse. 2 days ago, we were all set to leave the next day, and I received a notification that my tickets had been successfully canceled. I was in complete shock. I immediately called the airline and found out that they had been canceled from my account. They said they couldn't do anything about it. It was no surprise, it was Bonnie. I called her angrily, and she answered as if nothing had happened. I screamed, "How dare you cancel my tickets?" She laughed and replied, "Oh yes, I did." I lost my composure and shouted, "Would you care to explain this?" She casually responded, "Okay, I hate to say this, but we can't have you on the trip. You're too controlling, and your negative attitude will ruin it for everyone. I discussed it with everyone, and the family agreed to leave you out. You're not worth ruining our vacation over." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The trip I had planned and paid for was now happening without me. Somehow, Bonnie had convinced everyone that I was the problem, and they had all agreed to go ahead with it. At that moment, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. I logged into my account, canceled her ticket, and rebooked it under my name. Then I changed the password so she wouldn't be able to access it again or make any changes to the itinerary. I sent a message to the family group chat. "Since Bonnie decided I'm not welcome on the trip I paid for, I've canceled her ticket. If any of you want to stay with her, I'll be happy to cancel your tickets as well." The reaction was immediate. My brother called me right away and said he had no idea about Bonnie's moves. I explained the argument I had with her, and he confirmed that she was making things up. He assured me that he never agreed to leave me behind and was pretty sure that our parents would never forbid me from going on the trip I was paying for. It was a relief to know at least he wasn't on Bonnie's side. While I was talking to him, my parents called, furious that I had canceled Bonnie's ticket. They accused me of being petty and vengeful, but I stood my ground. I explained that I had planned and paid for the trip as a gift for the family, and if they didn't want me there, I'd go on a solo trip. But I wasn't going to give this up and sacrifice myself. They confirmed. They hadn't asked Bonnie to cancel my tickets, but they weren't happy that I canceled hers. They insisted that we should all go together on the trip. I told them I wasn't going to let Bonnie dictate the terms of my generosity. Bonnie, of course, was furious. She sent me a flurry of angry messages, calling me all sorts of names. I forwarded the messages to my parents to show them what their daughter was doing. My dad called me and offered to mediate the situation. He said he would include Bonnie in a call where she could apologize and I would then rebook her ticket so we could have a family vacation together. I wanted to resist this request, but a part of me knew that Bonnie would never apologize. So I accepted my dad's proposal. He added Bonnie to the call, but she was too angry to realize it was a conference call. Dad told her that she acted wrongly by canceling my tickets and that she should apologize before hearing anything else. She bluntly responded that she wasn't going to apologize because she did the right thing. We could both hear her muttering, "Apologize to that idiot? Not a chance." Dad hung up the call. He had nothing more to say. After that, I called him back and said, "Now do you see how cruel your daughter is? Or do you still want me to take her with us?" He stayed silent for a moment and said he was torn between two children. He acknowledged that I had done the right thing but admitted he felt sad that the trip wouldn't be the same after this conflict. This wasn't what he had imagined. It was supposed to be a family trip, and no matter how I felt about Bonnie, she was still part of the family. My brother and I might not be affected, but our parents would definitely feel her absence. Update 1. The situation between Bonnie and me got worse after I was excluded from the trip. She turned against me, trying to convince my brother to take her side. She even proposed the idea of sponsoring the trip together so they could leave me out. He laughed at her suggestion and asked if she had enough money to cover 50% of the trip's costs. She admitted that she didn't have the money right now, but promised to pay him back as soon as possible. My brother shook his head in disbelief. Both of us knew she would never follow through. She didn't have a stable job and often skipped work when she wasn't in the mood. When she suggested going to Mexico instead of Hawaii, my brother burst into laughter and rejected her offer to be the free photographer for their vacation. She hung up the phone and resorted to emotionally manipulating our parents to keep her on the trip. Fortunately, my parents stood firm this time, insisting that she apologize if she wanted to join us. They tried to convince her to be the bigger person and forgive Bonnie, urging her to do so, but they had no other choice but to accept that Bonnie wouldn't be joining us. When we boarded the plane, there was tension in the air, and I could see the disappointment in my parents' eyes. Upon arriving in Hawaii, I took charge of the planning and made sure we had a great time. We enjoyed a private luau, snorkeling adventures, and even a helicopter tour of the island. Despite the initial discomfort, we gradually started to relax and enjoy ourselves. My parents began to accept that this was still a family vacation, even without Bonnie. Throughout the week, I received sporadic angry messages from her, full of accusations. Even my parents started to see that her behavior was unreasonable. We came back from the trip with a ton of fresh memories and incredible experiences. Hawaii had a way of easing the tension. Although my parents were still disappointed that Bonnie wasn't there, they appreciated the effort I had put into making the trip memorable. Bonnie blocked me on social media and was furious with our parents for choosing me over her. She even expressed a desire to cut ties with them, but she couldn't because she was living in their house. She called my brother a freeloader for supporting me and said she never wanted to see me again. It was painful, but I knew I had done what I needed to do. I don't regret standing up for myself and setting boundaries, but I do wish things had turned out differently. Maybe someday Bonnie will realize she was on the wrong side, and we can repair our relationship. Until then, I'll hold on to the memories of that amazing trip. Update 2. Here's another update on the saga with my sister. It's been a while since these incidents, but I finally found the time to update here. After returning from the trip, I went back to work and had to put in extra hours to make up for my absence. I didn't talk to my parents about Bonnie right away, but I knew she must have been throwing tantrums against them for enjoying the trip without her, trying to make them feel worse. My brother and I flooded social media with family photos, and it was pretty fun. Almost 3 months later, I visited my parents and noticed that Bonnie's room was empty. I asked about her and I found out that they had finally asked her to leave. Well, not exactly kicked her out, but they told her to leave. She wasn't taking her life or career seriously, frequently missing work without reason. Since she didn't have any responsibilities like rent or food, she didn't take things seriously. A year ago, my parents demanded she start paying rent to live in their house. At first, she was furious and called them evil and greedy. When Dad threatened to evict her, she agreed to pay rent, but in a year she only managed to pay for 3 months. Every month, she came up with a new excuse to avoid paying. As expected, after my parents came back from their trip, she exploded. They tried to calm her down and even brought her gifts, but she threw them in their faces. Finally, Dad had enough of her superior attitude and told her to pack her bags, and he would drive her to her new place. Her behavior immediately changed. She started sobbing, hugged Mom, and said she had acted that way because she missed them and was hurt because we left her alone. Mom responded that she had brought this upon herself and that they didn't intend to leave her out. Her narcissistic behavior forced them to make this decision. She acted as if she were crying, promising to pay the rent every month. However, my parents had already given her enough time to change, but she remained the same narcissistic person. This time, they didn't give in to her manipulations and kicked her out of the house. Dad found a small apartment for her and even paid 2 months' rent. I didn't like how everything was handed to her on a silver platter, but it was better than letting her live in their house for free. Even though they were still concerned for her well-being, kicking her out was the best way to make her more independent. What they didn't know was that she was tough to deal with. Mom called me last week and gave me the latest update about Bonnie. Dad covered 2 months of rent for her while she moved out. Mom gave her prepared meals and snacks that lasted about a week. After that, Bonnie started stopping by my parents' house, staying until dinner time. Mom had to offer her food, and she even started occasionally staying overnight. At first, they tolerated it, thinking she was homesick, but after some time of this behavior, they decided to confront her. Bonnie admitted she had stopped paying rent and was hiding from the landlord. She hadn't paid anything during the 2 months she lived in the apartment. It was all with Dad's money. When Mom asked her what she had done with her salary, she said she bought work shoes. Mom offered to lend her money to cover the rent, but she refused, insisting on returning home. Mom asked Dad for help, and he stood firm, saying there would be no more assistance. He was tired of her manipulative tactics, and if she asked for help again, they wouldn't open the door for her. I thought Dad's response was a bit harsh, but I understood his frustration. He had done enough for Bonnie. She turned to my brother for help, saying she couldn't ask me because it would feed my ego and make her feel like a failure. My brother refused to get financially involved, even asking me indirectly through him to lend her money. He refused to keep it a secret from me, which made Bonnie furious. She became bitter towards him, calling him the one who kicks me out and my pet who runs after me for free food. I took these stories with caution, but her arrogant behavior had reached its peak.